Chapter 443. The man in the black t-shirt is one group of people, and the guy I just met is another. Li Wangquan really wasn't lying. Lu Qing left Wanhe Street thoughtfully, putting the matter at the back of his mind for the time being. He went to a secluded place he had found the day before and concentrated on practicing the swordsman formula and the unique skills of the ice sect, improving himself little by little. At 8 in the morning, he packed up his frame and went back the same way he had come. When he passed by a breakfast shop, he stopped and bought 4 big steamed buns, the kind that was oily and full of meat. Snap. He took a photo and sent it to Yenjuka with a snickering emoji. I read the comments online that this shop's steamed buns are pretty good. I just took a few bites, and it lives up to its name. But I didn't dare to buy too many for fear of scaring the owner. I had to go to the stalls one by one. It was almost dinner time. The girl quickly replied with a picture of the dining table. There were many dishes on it, including fried steak and stewed beef brisket with potatoes. It was a combination of Chinese and Western. The presentation was beautiful, but the taste was unknown. Come on, let's hurt each other, Yenjuka said, slamming the table. Lu Qing couldn't help but laugh. His mood improved and his appetite increased. He ate 7 breakfasts in a row and returned to the inn-style hotel in satisfaction. After more than an hour, Yenjuka finished her other business in intermittent chatting. She sent a video call request, which Lu Qing had been waiting for a long time. After a fleeting buffer, the girl appeared in the picture. She was wearing a nightgown that exposed her delicate collarbone, and covered with a quilt with a fresh pattern. Her hair was down and draped lazily behind her back. Without the glasses on her nose, her eyes sparkled. She was so beautiful that Lu Qing couldn't take his eyes off her. Say something. Why do you keep looking at me? Yenjuka tilted her head and raised her chin slightly. Because you're pretty, Lu Qing said half jokingly, half sincerely. Yenjuka's eyes curved into crescents. She spat. You're exaggerating. They flirted for a while before the girl changed the topic out of concern for Lu Qing. Chung, did you find anything at old Nanny Chio's? No, I bumped into a colleague before I entered the house. After a few rounds, I realized that I had alerted the others, so I left. But judging from the situation in the yard, old Nanny Chio is indeed as mysterious, gloomy, and weird as the rumors say. Lu Qing truthfully described what he had seen and heard in front of his wife. You even had a fight. Yenjuka focused on the main point she was most concerned about. Lu Qing coughed twice and said, It's nothing. After all, we live in a society governed by law. Who dares to hurt people casually? It's just a few moves, and there was no killing intent. For others, it's not worth taking such a risk for a secret method. Especially since both sides were dance stage martial artists. They were definitely the backbone of their respective forces. If something were to happen to them, neither side would let the matter rest. A secret method was indeed precious, but it wasn't enough to put one in jail for half a life. If it didn't involve the mystery of the Jindan in his body, Lu Qing might not even have been interested in it. Some things were more like embellishments and icing on the cake. Therefore, he noticed that the black shadow was obviously restraining himself when he punched at the beginning. You're right. Yenjuka nodded slightly. She rolled her eyes and said thoughtfully, Chung, yesterday you said that your master didn't care much about the 9 words formula, and wasted a lot of precious time to train you. Let me think about it. Something seems wrong. Your master doesn't care about it, but what about the military? Aren't they also collecting the 9 words formula for research? Are they willing to take the risk of losing the fighting formula until you're free? Lu Qing was stunned, and the doubts in his heart suddenly cleared up. That's right. Seniors like the Queen of Thought and the Divine Enchanter of Sin Flame were very concerned about the 9 words formula. The military had no reason to watch the loss of the fighting formula just because of their master's capricious request to train his disciple. The reason why they didn't do anything and didn't intervene was because everything was under control so far. Those 2 groups of people weren't big forces, so the military was confident they could handle them. But shouldn't the focus be on old Nanny Chio? Once this key figure disappeared completely, the military would be at a loss, right? They haven't done anything yet because they've been monitoring the situation and keeping track of old Nanny Chio's whereabouts, so they're confident of my safety. Before the situation goes out of control, They're giving me a chance to train for my master's sake? Phew. In that case, they must be waiting for me to ask for help so that they can settle this matter openly. Thinking about this, Lu Cheng understood the whole story. He was like a child. Under the supervision of his parents, he was playing a game that seemed risky but was actually as stable as a dog. And the parents were proudly waiting for the child to ask for help. As a child, Lu Cheng's competitive spirit was immediately aroused. He wanted to do this beautifully and not rely on the military. He wanted to get the fighting formula before they interfered. I can't be underestimated. I can't let my parents get what they want. Lu Cheng's laziness was gone, and he told Yanzhika his speculations and ideas. Yes, Brother Cheng, you can do it. Don't let the military have a chance. Yanzhika clenched her fists and replied cheerfully, trying to encourage him in a coquettish tone. Hee, I'm indeed the smartest person in the family. With the military's supervision, she was completely relieved. After Yanzhika said good night, and reluctantly went to warm the bed with the Empress Dowager, Lu Cheng felt an indescribable sense of loss. After a moment of contemplation, he opened his notebook and began to organize his thoughts by writing. My advantage is that I'm wearing glasses, short hair, and a disguise. Even if they've watched the national competition on TV, they won't recognize me unless they're familiar with me in daily life. The other two groups of people either don't know about my existence or don't know who I am, so they can take advantage of me. My disadvantage is that I'm hiding in the shadows without the help of the military, so I can't collect as much information as the other two groups of people. After that, Lu Cheng began to write down the possible ways to find old Nanny Chiao. First, I can ask for help from the authorities and the police. Second, the ancient city has a dark side and may be more well-informed. The locals have mentioned several times that even Zhou Wei suffered a loss because of old Nanny Chiao. Obviously, she's not an ordinary person. I can start from this clue. Third, I can follow the other two groups of people and use their information as my information. If they have a certain amount of power, they'll probably use the government's resources. First, I can combine them here. Fourth, I'll go to old Nanny Chiao's house at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning and look for clues. After he finished writing, Lu Cheng read carefully, combined and diverged, and finally concluded 3 things to do today. First, find out who Zhou Wei is and look for him secretly. Second, the other group of people is more secretive and I don't have any clues yet. The man in the black t-shirt is in the open. While doing the first thing, I'll look for him and the other fighters who showed up yesterday. If there's no other way, I'll follow the 2 girls in the back row. That guy is very interested in romance and may contact them. Third, I'll go to number 15 Wanha Street again. After finishing the plan, Lu Cheng took his phone and wallet and left the room for lunch. In order to hide his identity, he insisted on eating less but eating more. Like yesterday, he would share his lunch in different restaurants so that no one would notice his unusual appetite. After calling his sect for help, Ho Yulin took a short nap and did his daily exercise. Under the dazzling sunlight, he walked to the Li family's silver jewelry shop. The elder couldn't leave immediately or fly, so he had to take the high-speed rail or a bus and wouldn't arrive until tomorrow morning. Before that, he couldn't do nothing but wait here. The new master who showed up last night shouldn't be from there. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone to investigate in the middle of the night. He could find old Nanny Chiao's house through Li Wangquan. Maybe he could get some information from the silver jewelry shop in case one of them was in the light while the other was in the dark. Ho Yulin couldn't help but shudder at the thought of the master he met in old Nanny Chiao's house in the early morning. It was like a nightmare imprinted in his mind. Every time he recalled it, he would break out in a cold sweat. What a formidable master! I should avoid him as much as possible after getting some information. Ho Yulin looked up at the plaque with the words, Li Family's Silver Jewelry Shop, and walked in. The triangular-eyed Li Wangquan glanced at the plaque and greeted him happily. He asked expectantly, "What do you want to ask today?" These foreigners, if they are not good at anything else, they are very generous. Ho Yulin took out his wallet, counted a stack of money, and handed it to him. While complaining that he was so outdated that he couldn't scan the QR code to pay and was uneasy to monitor, Ho Yulin asked calmly, "Who else came to ask about old Nanny Chiao these days?" Li Wangquan counted the money happily and said, "Yes, yes, a young man came to ask about her. He was about 23 or 24 years old, wearing a white shirt, jeans, and a pair of big black-rimmed glasses. He had a kind smile. A young man about 23 or 24 years old. He showed such formidable strength last night. Which force did he belong to?" Ho Yulin pondered and asked a few more questions. Then he turned and left the silver jewelry shop. When he came to the street, he looked around casually, instinctively looking for a young man about 23 or 24 years old, wearing a white shirt, jeans, and black-rimmed glasses. "Well, there's one over there. There's one over there, 3, for after walking 2 streets, Ho Yulin saw a total of 5 people with similar characteristics. So common. Ho Yulin complained and gave up the search. He began to suspect that the person Li Wangquan mentioned was the master he met last night. He must have hired an ordinary young man to ask about him to avoid being exposed. That's very likely. That's what I felt when I met him last night." Ho Yulin withdrew his gaze from the rice noodle shop. Lu Qing was sitting there, quietly drinking the fresh and delicious soup. Chapter 444. As for Zhou Wei, the residents of Zhengyan ancient city, who were willing to tell Lu Qing about old Nanny Qiu, felt it was a taboo. No one dared to say too much. Lu Qing had been busy for a while but still couldn't find anything. As for the man in the black t-shirt and the martial artists who were monitoring 15 Wanha Street, they seemed to have hidden themselves or were waiting for something. In such a large ancient city, it was not easy to meet them. Lu Qing had no choice but to target the 2 girls in the back row. He had met them several times yesterday, and knew which inn they were staying in. After waiting for a while, he finally saw 2 familiar figures around 4 or 5 in the afternoon. One of them was beautiful with a slender figure, and the other was ordinary with an artistic look. After a short rest, they set off again. Lu Qing followed them from a distance with his mobile phone. If they looked back, he pretended to be wandering around and taking photos. The 2 girls walked and stopped, laughing, looking at local specialties and listening to local musical instruments. They didn't look like they were looking for dinner. Instead, they seemed to be following fate. After following them for more than half an hour, Lu Qing was a little impatient. He walked to the front and met them by chance. Then he got closer and eavesdropped on their conversation. "Cece, look, it's him again." The artistic girl pointed at Lu Qing. The pretty girl frowned her thin eyebrows and said, "It's true. He seems to be following us all the time." "Haha, he must be attracted by your beauty, but doesn't dare to talk to you. I saw him several times yesterday." The artistic girl gossiped. "But our Cece won't like such a boring, timid, and unhandsome otaku." Cece bit her lower lip and said with fear, "Shin, don't say that. It's so scary. What if he's a bad guy or a pervert? It was like running into a stalker." "You're right." Ashin also felt a bit uneasy. "It's daytime and there are so many people here. I don't think he'll do anything. I think he just admires you and doesn't have the guts to talk to you. He just wants to look at you." Lu Cheng's mouth twitched. He didn't expect that his stalking would be discovered so soon, and that he would be regarded as a stalker. "Hey, I don't look like a pervert." "No, that's not the main point. Are my tracking skills that bad?" The answer is very definite. I don't have any tracking skills at all." He had never followed anyone before, so he didn't know what to avoid and what to pay attention to. Lu Qing almost covered his face and sighed. He hurriedly unlocked his phone and sent a message to his wife while following Cece and Shen. He described what had happened just now and expressed his grievances. Then he clicked open the browser app, entered the search page, and hurriedly typed a few words. "Tailing skills. Bah, it's more like a tracking technique." Lu Qing changed his words in a self-deprecating manner, wondering sadly if the other party would call the police. At this time, Cece pretended to be looking for something and quickly glanced sideways. She was so scared that she hurriedly turned her head and said, "He's still here, still here. What should we do?" Shin was also nervous. "Should we call the police? It's useless. He didn't do anything. How about we finish our meal and go back to the hotel?" Cece was a little flustered. Shin shook her head solemnly. "He'll find out where we live. Cece, let's ask Brother Huang for help. He still owes us a meal. He said he would hang out with us these 2 days, but we didn't see him. Brother Huang. Cici was obviously convinced. Yeah, Brother Huang looks so strong and says he's a fighter. It should be easy for him to scare away a cowardly pervert. Listen to me, the bad guys should be punished by the bad guys. The more Shen thought about it, the more convinced she was. Then she smiled in a low voice. And Brother Huang looks at you in a weird way. How can he let go of such a good opportunity to save a damsel in distress? You've been out of love for almost 3 months. You should give yourself a chance to be free. Well, I'll ask him if he's free. Cici picked up her phone and switched to WeChat. She clicked on Huang Zihua, who she had just added yesterday, and typed a lot of words. After a few minutes, she said happily, he said he'll take care of this and asked us to meet him at Ian Bridge. Good, as expected of a pretty girl. Shen deliberately looked back at Lu Cheng, only to see that he was still following them, pretending to be looking at his phone. Well, I've found Brother Huang in the black t-shirt. Although I've achieved my goal, why don't I feel happy at all? Lu Cheng thought and sighed inwardly. He planned to continue following the 2 girls until they were close to Ian Bridge. He didn't want to miss them if they changed their meeting point midway. Well, I have to learn some tracking skills on the way. After all, my target is a dance stage fighter. Go straight, turn again, go straight again. Cici suddenly handed her phone to Shen and said in a low voice, look. Shen took the phone in confusion and looked at it. Brother Huang said, don't be surprised that I didn't wait for you at Ian Bridge. I'll hide nearby so that the stalker won't run away. I have to teach him a lesson. Brother Huang is really... Shen didn't say much but gave Cici a thumbs up in surprise and joy. She was looking forward to what was going to happen next. Yes, Cici had the same feeling. That kind of pervert should be taught a lesson. Although he admires me. After walking for another 10 minutes or so, seeing that they were approaching the street where Ian Bridge was located, the 2 girls couldn't help but slow down their pace. They waited for Brother Huang to suddenly appear, grab the stalker behind them, drag him into the alley, and teach him a good lesson. If they didn't do this on the street, it would be easy to attract onlookers, and it would be easy for the stalker to bite them back. Lu Cheng decided to go ahead and stop following them. However, as soon as he moved, he felt that he was being stared at. Unexpectedly, the man in the black t-shirt appeared in front of him and ran towards him. Lu Cheng's heart skipped a beat. Instead of dodging, he allowed the other party to approach him. The other party stretched out his arm in an exaggerated manner and grabbed Lu Cheng's shoulder tightly. Lu Cheng smiled ominously. Let's go there and have a chat. Lu Cheng sighed. His stalking plan was ruined. He pretended to be trembling and didn't dare to resist. He was dragged to a quiet alley nearby. Yes, Cici and Shen blurted out in unison. Brother Huang is really awesome. That stalker is like a child compared to him. They turned around and walked into the alley. They wanted to see what was going on, but didn't dare to. In the alley, Brother Huang, the man in the black t-shirt, let go of Lu Cheng and cracked his knuckles. He put on a ferocious smile and said, Brat, you're really something. How dare you follow a girl? If I don't teach you a lesson, you won't know that I have 3 eyes. At this moment, he saw the man wearing black-rimmed glasses raise his hands and form a hand seal. He suddenly opened his mouth and said, Army. This. Huang Zihua's mind buzzed, and he felt as if his entire body was covered by layers upon layers of the ferocious aura of the battlefield, and he had fallen into a state of being suppressed by ghosts. He clearly knew that something was wrong, yet no matter how he struggled, he couldn't wake up. At this moment, Lu Cheng connected them tightly and calmly visualized the frozen river. He adjusted the waves created by his muscles, fascia, and internal organs, and then quickly switched to the scene of thunderclouds shaking. Bang! He punched out. Severe warning. Huang Zihua, the man in the black t-shirt, had just broken free from the army formula when his vision turned black, and he suddenly lost consciousness. At this moment, there was only one thought in his mind. I've been in Jianghu for so many years and I've survived all kinds of hardships. Now I'm doomed. Thump. Lu Cheng raised his hand and hit Huang Zihua again. Huang Zihua's mind and body were frozen at the same time, so he passed out completely. In broad daylight and at such a close distance, as long as he resisted, his opponent would be able to figure out who he was. Therefore, he didn't need to hide anything. Glancing at the entrance of the alley, Lu Qing squatted down and found the man's phone. He tried one by one with the man's fingerprint and finally unlocked it. After checking the man's WeChat chat history, Lu Qing roughly figured out the current situation. The man's name was Huang Zihua. He was the backbone of a sect called Zhengfa School, which had some connections with Daxing Temple. Old Nanny Chio's disappearance that day was very strange. The surveillance didn't notice anything, and the police found nothing either. They had to use all kinds of resources to inquire about the situation from old Nanny Chio's former lover. But so far, the results were not very good. It seems that I haven't fallen behind. Lu Qing put the phone back into Huang Zihua's pocket and pinched his philtrum to wake him up. After that, Lu Qing didn't go back the way he came. Instead, he went out of the alley and merged into the crowd. Outside the alley, Cici and Shen waited for a while, and then walked in curiously. After a few steps, they suddenly saw the strong man in the black t-shirt lying against the wall with his eyes closed. He was unconscious. They were stunned. Their pupils contracted and they let out a short scream, unable to believe what they had seen. What happened just now? Why was Brother Huang, who was supposed to teach the stalker a lesson, taught a lesson? Why does this matter feel so strange? Disturbed by the scream, Huang Zihua woke up completely and opened his eyes. Seeing the familiar scene in the alley, he was relieved. He knew that the master he had just encountered didn't want to kill him. The army formula. A unique skill that can freeze the mind. Clues to the fighting formula. Very young. At this moment, one thought after another appeared in Huang Zihua's mind, strung together into a line, and finally fixed on the slightly stiff face from before. It's him? Huang Zihua was startled and stood up abruptly. Ignoring Cici and Shen's confused and scared eyes, he took out his mobile phone and called the sect. Then he said solemnly, "Brother, I'm here. Lu Qing is here." Chapter 445. The name Lu Qing meant a lot. Lu Qing was a peerless genius, one of the few fighters below the inhuman stage. He was almost as powerful as Peng Liyun before his breakthrough. They were no match for him at all. Therefore, they had to ask one of the most powerful elders of their sect to come here and set off immediately. Lu Qing was not alone. He had the support of the Ice God sect. He might have come here carelessly without informing his sect, but in this situation, he had to ask for help. Even if the Ice God sect had little influence in the provinces and cities around the ancient city, they still had a lot of masters. Any two of them would be beyond his power to contend with. Well, the elders had to come here before tomorrow morning and search for old Nanny Chio within one day. If they couldn't find her and get the clue of the fighting formula, they would leak this information to Daxing Temple and try to get something out of it. All kinds of thoughts flashed through the mind of Huang Zihua, the man in the black t-shirt. His tone and expression were solemn as he tried to get help from the other side of the phone. His words were concise and comprehensive, and he did not say much. Everything was contained in those two simple words. After hanging up the phone, Huang Zihua calmed himself down and glanced at Cici and Shen. He nodded reluctantly and said, "I've got something to do. I'll treat you to dinner later." The mysterious disappearance of old Nanny Chio had put him under a lot of pressure. He didn't have the time to flirt with girls until he received Cici's message. He wanted to relax and clear his mind to see if he could get some inspiration. Now that a powerful figure was here and the situation had changed drastically, he didn't have the time to chat with girls. Okay. Cici and Shen looked at each other in confusion. They didn't know what was going on at the moment, so they answered in confusion. Then Cici instinctively added worriedly, "Brother Huang, that stalker won't come again, right?" Huang Zihua gazed at her and said, Don't worry, his target is not you." Then he walked out of the alley and returned to the inn, leaving the two girls standing there in a daze. Not me. The unconscious Brother Huang. The stalker didn't show up. Cici looked at Shen and suddenly had some guesses. We seem to be involved in something serious. I'm afraid that the stalker is looking for Brother Huang. I'm just a cover. After understanding this, Cici was both relieved and scared. She felt curious and inexplicably disappointed. At this moment, Ah Shun frowned and murmured to herself, Lu Cheng, this name sounds familiar. Now that his identity had been exposed, Lu Qing knew that Huang Zihua would definitely ask for help. He wasn't willing to ask for help from his parents, unless he was in a desperate situation. Therefore, he packed a lot of food and returned to the inn. While eating, he analyzed and pondered over the information he had received from Huang Zihua. He wanted to speed up his progress and try to be one step ahead of Huang Zihua. Through the authorities, they found the local tyrant, Zhou Wei, but they didn't get any useful information. They had sent people to keep an eye on Li Wangquan, hoping that old Nanny Chiu would walk into the trap. For this eccentric and mysterious woman, it was very likely that she would retaliate after being betrayed by Li Wangquan. Some of them were still keeping an eye on 15, Wanha Street, fearing that old Nanny Chiu might come home to fetch something. Lu Qing didn't come up with any new discoveries after going through his mind. He just eliminated a lot of possibilities. Before he knew it, it was almost 8:30 in the evening. His cell phone rang with a special reminder. Yin Zheka sent a laughing emoji. Haha, such a funny thing this early in the morning. Hello, pervert Chung. What can I do? I'm also helpless. I don't know how to follow people. Lu Qing sent a crying emoji. It wasn't a good experience to be a pervert, except in front of Ke. What do the two girls look like? Yenjika sent a laughing emoji. They're so. I can recognize them if I see them, but I can't remember them if I don't see them. Lu Qing thought of something and answered with a little exaggeration. Yenjika sent a biting emoji. You're lying. If they're not pretty, why would Huang Zihua hit on them? After all, he's at the dance stage. Maybe it's because it's hard for me to go from luxury to frugality. Lu Qing saw that his little fairy had fallen into his trap and sent a laughing emoji. Yenjika paused for a moment before replying. I almost laughed out loud and spat out the milk. My mom looked at me strangely. Oh, by the way, have you found any clues? She was in a good mood and brought the topic back to the right track. Does it count as a clue if all the clues are gone? Lu Qing told his wife what he had concluded. Yes. Yenjika sent a contemplative emoji with her hands on her chin. According to mystery novels, we have to go back to the starting point and start again. Since we can't figure out how old Nanny Chiu left the yard, we have to go back to the place where she disappeared and start again. So, I plan to go to old Nanny Chiu's house at 3 in the morning to see if there are any clues left by others. They can't find it, but it doesn't mean I can't. Not many people below the level of physical invulnerability can master a unique skill like Ice Mirror. Lu Qing said tacitly. Hee, husband and wife think alike. Yenjika replied with a laughing emoji. The pleasant conversation became intermittent after Yenjika packed up and left the house. However, the intermittent conversation didn't last long because it was time for Lu Qing to sleep and recover his energy. After saying goodnight, he sighed and entered meditation. He fell into a deep sleep. At 3 in the morning, the alarm clock rang. Lu Qing woke up at once and became energetic again. After changing into his dark martial arts suit, he told Yenjika and himself, let's go. In the dead of night, the lights were lonely. Lu Qing walked in the dark and soon arrived at 15, Wanha Street. Relying on his keen senses and previous experience, he found 2 hidden posts. He waited patiently. When a drunkard passed by and attracted the attention of the hidden posts, he jumped over the wall like a big black bird and directly entered old Nanny Chiu's yard. He landed silently and pounced forward like a civet cat. Lu Qing opened the door gently and entered the room, closing the door behind him. Under the starlight, he saw everything in the room, including many antique utensils, paintings, and decorations. It was said that old Nanny Chiu didn't like calligraphy and paintings. Lu Qing was puzzled and checked them one by one, but still found no valuable clues. He looked carefully from the living room to the bedroom, from the bedroom to the kitchen, but found nothing. Lu Qing had no choice but to stop thinking and visualize the ice mirror. He calmed himself down and reflected every detail within dozens of centimeters around him. Everything appeared. He walked back step by step according to the route he had taken just now. He felt that the surroundings were quiet and peaceful, without any unusual changes. from the kitchen to the bedroom, from the bedroom to the living room. Lu Qing suddenly heard a heartbeat, but it wasn't his own heartbeat. Thump. His scalp went numb. He stopped and listened attentively, ready to attack with all his might. After a full minute, a second plop sounded from the bottom of his heart. Thump, thump, thump. The heartbeat was slow and low, as if it came from the depths of the earth, like the call of an evil ghost. Lu Qing took a deep breath. The ice mirror in his heart was still there, and he got rid of all the creepy thoughts. A few minutes later, he stepped back and looked at the spot where he had just stepped. The floor of the living room was untouched, only compacted with soil. And the weird heartbeat came from under the soil. It's here. Damn, what the hell is this? Lu Qing swallowed his saliva. His mind raced and he had a few guesses. He suddenly sat down with his legs crossed and visualized the corresponding ancient word for army. His aura immediately spread outward, like a doomsday snowstorm that darkened the sky, lowered the temperature, and pressed down on the ground where the terrifying heartbeat came from. Thump. Lu Qing sat cross-legged and reached out his right hand. With the help of his aura, he clenched his fist and knocked lightly on the ground. He said in a low voice, "Come out. Come out. I won't do anything to you." As soon as his voice fell, a strange change occurred. The ground seemed to be wriggling, and colorful little insects drilled out one after another. They rushed up along his fist that was touching the ground like a tide. They were so dense that it made people tremble both physically and mentally. Lu Qing shook his head. The surface of his fist was suddenly ignited with a violent red flame. The colorful bugs were burned black before they could do anything. They fell like rain. When there were only a dozen bugs left, they finally stopped flying like moths to the flame. A small, slightly wrinkled hand poked out of the compacted soil. It was not big and looked like a woman. In the strange scene, another hand, head, torso, and feet all crawled out of the ground, outlining an old woman in dark red clothes. Old Nanny Chiu? Lu Qing secretly exhaled, withdrew his aura, and asked with a smile. The old woman, with a straight face and a slightly trembling body, corrected him. Chiu Huazhen. Sure enough. Lu Qing looked her up and down, and found that she didn't look old except for the white hair on her head. She was dignified and elegant, not at all strange and scary as the rumors said. Well, she used to be a beauty with many pursuers. Lu Qing nodded. Supernatural power? If old Nanny Chiu was strong, she wouldn't have to hide in this way. But she could hide in the soil and not come out for days like hibernation. It's hard for anyone below the level of physical invulnerability to do that. Yes. Chiu Huazhen stared at him coldly. What do you want? Lu Qing was about to take out the picture of the fighting formula flagon when he suddenly had an idea. He looked at the decorations and said, "These are all antiques, right?" You know. Chiu Huazhen's face changed dramatically. Not much, Lu Qing answered vaguely. You should tell me yourself. Old Nanny Chiu and her gang must be a grave robber gang. No wonder they could find something related to the fighting formula. Maybe they have killed people before. That's why they didn't want to discuss with those two groups, and kept trying to escape. Chapter 446. Old Nanny Chiu's explanation was similar to Lu Cheng's conjecture. She had been able to hibernate like an animal when she was young, and could barely manipulate the soil. Later, she joined a grave robbing gang and learned some basic voodoo. She often didn't go out of the house for a few days, because she had quietly left the ancient city. In the eyes of the neighbors, she became more and more mysterious and strange. Those who had lived with her for a period of time felt that she was even more strange. Sometimes they felt a sense of horror and didn't dare to talk too much about her. The items related to the fighting formula were obtained during this process. Since most of them were damaged, the gang leader didn't value them much. Since Nanny Chiu liked similar items, he simply gave them to her and asked her to take them home, just like the broken bottles and jars outside her room. Once, they had a lot of loot and sold it for a lot of money. Internal strife broke out in the gang. Someone tried to kill the leader with a sneak attack. Chiu Huazhen took advantage of her supernatural ability and voodoo to take most of the money and items. She fled back to her hometown, where the other members didn't know. Since then, she rarely went out and lived a peaceful life. She would only sell 1 or 2 items when she needed money. Old Nanny Chio had been living like this for years, until 2 groups of people suddenly came knocking on her door. She was ill-informed and didn't know anything about the 9 words formula. She didn't believe that the item related to the fighting character in her possession had any value. She suspected that the descendants of the gang members had found her and were waiting for helpers to gather. She couldn't help but feel terrified, but she didn't dare to call the police and walk right into the trap. She used witchcraft to temporarily intimidate the 2 groups of people. Under their surveillance, during the noisiest time of the day, she took a few of the most valuable items and sank into the ground. She planned to hibernate for half a month. This was also the limit of her supernatural ability. She would only escape when the people at the door no longer paid attention to this place. She was smart enough to get a fake identity in another city and own 2 houses. She only stayed in Zhengyan because she didn't want to leave the hometown she was familiar with. I've said all I want to say. What do you want? Old Nanny Chio looked at Lu Cheng with cold and fearful eyes. She wasn't very strong, but her witchcraft was mysterious and mysterious. That was why she didn't dare to fight the 2 groups of people head-on. She had to think of a way to escape. Facing the powerful and terrifying martial artists in front of her, it was hard for her to have any thoughts of resistance. Lu Qing sighed to himself and smiled. Where's the jade pendant with the word "do" on it? Just for this? Old Nanny Chio asked in surprise, her face full of confusion. Back then, that thing was just a piece of junk in the eyes of the leader. If it wasn't for its beauty, he wouldn't have wanted it. I'm just looking around. Lu Qing replied calmly. Old Nanny Chio glanced at him suspiciously and took out a jade pendant from her pocket. The pendant had a unique pattern and a delicate design. In the center of the pendant, there was a word "fighting" engraved on it, as if it was a work of God. The word "fighting" meant that it would never admit defeat. Lu Qing lifted his eyelids slightly and sized up the jade pendant. Due to the passage of time, the Inqi had corroded it and damaged it severely. Even the charm of the fighting character was only left with a faint trace. To others, it was impossible to use it to practice any secret method. But to him, all he needed was a primer to induce the Jindan to resonate. That was enough. Keeping his expression unchanged, he squinted his eyes and signaled old Nanny Chio to put the jade pendant close to him. He tried to comprehend the essence and charm of the fighting character. After 7 or 8 minutes, he managed to visualize a vague fighting character with a very faint charm. He formed a seal with both hands, one in front of the other, and pointed to his dantian. He then opened his mouth and said in a low voice, "My name is Fighting." Fighting. With an illusory buzzing sound, Lu Qing felt the Jindan in his lower abdomen tremble under the influence of the fighting character in his mind. Ripples appeared one after another. The dazzling stars and scorching grand sun moved quickly and formed a fighting character that was powerful, domineering, terrifying, and full of explosive power. The charm of never lowering one's head to face everything was as real as it could be. Connected in reverse, the visualization diagram in Lu Cheng's mind changed rapidly and presented the correct form, leaving a deep impression on him. Fighting. Under old Nanny Chio's astonished gaze, Lu Cheng opened his mouth again, his ancient voice echoing. His muscles bulged and his momentum soared into the sky, overflowing with a strong fighting spirit. Old Nanny Chio couldn't help but move back a little because of the explosive power. The fighting formula increased one's strength for one explosive strike. The better he practiced it, and the better he mastered it, the more terrifying the result would be. It's a bit like Kaioken. Lu Cheng thought in delight as he finally mastered the fighting formula. However, the fighting formula hadn't increased his strength by more than 30%, and he estimated that it would increase by 1 or 2 times at most in the future. Besides, the fighting formula was completed by stimulating the qi and blood, and squeezing the body. Once the limit was exceeded, the body would collapse and couldn't recover without a long period of recuperation. It might even leave serious hidden dangers. While using the fighting formula, he also noticed the changes in his Jindan. Not only did it move the stars and ripple the water, but it also seemed to have awakened the swordsman formula, forwarding formula, army formula, and attainment formula. They turned into 5 nodes, in the vast universe, and formed a relatively stable structure. His premonition of danger seemed to have become stronger, and his supernatural abilities of ice and fire were connected to it to a certain extent. They were no longer isolated from the inside and outside, but more distinct at the root pulp level, giving him a feeling that he could really influence them. Phew. I'll be able to open the door to the inhuman stage and begin to transform after some time of consolidation? Lu Qing nodded thoughtfully. After Peng Leyun recovered from his injury, he completed the transformation and received the certificate of fifth pin, officially stepping into the inhuman realm. As for Renli, it was said that she had entered the stage of accumulating strength to overtake others. At the end of July, she successfully pushed open the door of the inhuman realm. Well, I'm not that slow either. Lu Qing picked up the fighting jade pendant with a smile and said to old Nanny Qiu, "How much is it?" He decided to go back and carefully study the changes in his Jindan. "How much is it?" For a moment, old Nanny Qiu thought she had misheard him. At this stage he could just take it away and she wouldn't dare to resist. After a moment of silence she said, "It's not a good thing. 600. Actually, if you don't name a price, I'll keep it for you," said Lu Qing sincerely. "Anyway, I've already mastered the fighting formula. If I didn't want to keep it as a souvenir, I wouldn't even look at this jade pendant. And its actual value is only a few hundred in the eyes of others. Forget it. It's a troublemaker." Old Nanny Qiu raised her eyelids and answered dispiritedly, "Okay." Lu Qing touched his trouser pocket and suddenly felt a little embarrassed. He was afraid of a fight, so he only brought his cell phone and didn't bring his wallet. He felt his balls ache for more than 10 seconds and asked with a smile, "Can I pay with my cell phone?" "What?" Old Nanny Qiu was confused. Lu Qing cleared his throat and pretended to be normal. "I don't have money. I'll return the jade pendant to you." Old Nanny Qiu suddenly understood what was going on. After a moment of silence she said, "Then I'll give it to you. I don't know what will happen to me if I keep it." "Okay. I'll put the money in your room later." Lu Qing put away the jade pendant and thought for a moment. "I told you I won't do anything to you. As long as you can avoid being found by others, I'll pretend I never came." Old Nanny Qiu nodded slightly and didn't say anything. She gathered the bug's body and lay down again. The hard soil suddenly softened and she and the bug sank into it. Then it solidified again and disappeared without a trace. Lu Qing turned around and carefully flashed out of the room. Before the hidden post noticed him, he had already jumped over the wall and disappeared into the night. Now that it was quiet, he looked at the jade pendant and called his wife with his cell phone. "I got it." After sending the message, he suddenly felt that it was unreal. The development of this matter was completely out of his expectations. Obtaining the fighting formula had been too easy. But on second thought, he felt relieved. This matter was actually very simple. If Huang Zihua and the others hadn't paid too much attention to it, and if it wasn't a coincidence that scared old Nanny Qiu, they would have gotten it long ago. Yin Zhika, who was in the afternoon, replied quickly with a dumbfounded expression. "Really? So fast?" Qing didn't leave for long. "Yeah." Lu Qing was proud of himself. He repeated the story with a smile and showed her the jade pendant. "It's really there." Yin Zhika was relieved at first. Then she clenched her fist and said, "Brother Qing is awesome. Sister Ku is awesome too." Pfft. Lu Qing couldn't help but laugh. He happily replied with a few words and then said, "I'll teach you later." "Why can't I teach my wife the fighting formula I got with my own ability?" "Okay." Yin Zhika sat and waited obediently. "Go back and get some sleep. Don't wander around outside." "Okay, I'll tell my master first." Lu Qing thought for a while and suddenly said, "Forget it. I'll tell him in a few days." Since the military had everything under control and was watching his game, like a parent, he wouldn't say anything. Let's see when they get anxious and take action. "You're so naughty," Yin Zhika said after a while. Lu Qing was in a good mood. He hummed silently and returned to the inn. He didn't go back to sleep. Instead, he spent some time studying the changes in the Jindan. He was sure that under the guidance of his ice and fire supernatural abilities, he could smoothly trigger some of the energy inside the Jindan. As for the guidance, it would take time to figure it out. The rest of his gains were what he sensed at the first moment. 2 hours later, Lu Qing went out as usual and found a place to train until the sun rose from the east. At 10 in the morning, Hou Yulin and Huang Zihua saw the elders of their sect. Chapter 447. Where is Lu Qing? Feng Fakue, the elder of the Zhengfa sect, whose forehead bulged like the god of longevity, asked in a deep voice. Huang Zihua was prepared for this question. He went to old Nanny Chio's house last night to look for clues, but I don't think he got anything. He didn't go out except for practicing martial arts this morning. He found out which hotel Lu Qing was staying in through the police, and sent someone to keep an eye on it. He didn't expect to stop Lu Qing, but just wanted to know what was going on as soon as possible. Okay. Feng Fakue nodded slowly. Send more people to keep an eye on old Nanny Chio. I don't believe that she hasn't shown any abnormality in front of others all these years. What about you? Huang Zihua blurted out in confusion. Feng Fakue turned to look out of the window. I'll go to old Nanny Chio's house again to see if you missed any clues. In the Li family's silver jewelry shop, the greedy and lazy Li Wangquan looked at the old man with thick eyebrows and small eyes and said in a trembling voice, I told you everything. The old man was Wan Shengjiang, Hou Yulin's martial uncle. He was as intimidating as a lion or a tiger. He asked coldly, really? Think about it again. Think about what your father told you about old Nanny Chio. Li Wangquan looked at Hou Yulin helplessly, only to find that Hou Yulin was admiring his silver jewelry and didn't care about it at all. His body and mind trembled as his thoughts raced. He remembered something and blurted it out. My father told me that she's actually very rich. She's a monster. After listening to Li Wangquan, Wan Shengjiang looked at his martial nephew and said thoughtfully, old Nanny Chio might have some supernatural ability to escape from the surveillance. I'll go and check again. There should be some clues left. Yulin, you split into 2 groups. One group keeps an eye on Lu Qing, and the other group doesn't hide anything. Follow the Zhengfa school. If we don't find anything today, we won't get anything. Yes, martial uncle. Hou Yulin said with a heavy heart. While the 2 groups of people were frantically searching for Yanzhika, Lu Qing was sitting in front of the desk in the room, video chatting with Yanzhika on the computer. The 2 of them didn't mention the fighting formula, or the possible upheaval outside. Instead, they chatted about the interesting things the girl had encountered in the past few days as she settled down, went shopping, and registered for classes. They also shared the customs of different countries and regions. Just then, Lu Qing's phone rang. A call came in. He picked it up and saw that it was his master. Thus, he made a hand gesture to Little Fairy and chose to accept the call. Hello, master, what's the matter? Lu Qing could vaguely guess the purpose of this call, so he pretended to be at a loss and asked. Geezer sure chuckled and said, You seem to have a lot of free time. Are you not anxious at all? Both sides have sent experienced experts over. Maybe Daxing Temple and the others will be involved. The military can't wait any longer. They plan to take over this matter. They asked you to stay aside and watch. Don't interfere. Sure. Lu Qing answered in a relaxed tone, which made Yanzhika burst into laughter on the screen. She pursed her lips and looked at him sideways. SSS, you brat. Something's not right. Cough, cough, are you hiding something from me, your master? Are you really not anxious? Aren't you afraid that the fighting formula will fall into the hands of others? Are you really willing to be completely outclassed by the military? I'm not anxious. Why should I be anxious? Lu Qing answered with a smile. I've already mastered the fighting formula. Cough, cough, cough. Geezer sure seemed to have taken a sip of wine and spat out something. After a while he said, When did you find the fighting formula? Not only did he find it, but he also mastered it. If it weren't for the dignity of a master, this old man would have asked a bunch of questions. Lu Qing briefly explained the matter from beginning to end. He didn't even hide the fact that he wanted to see the military make a fool of themselves. However, he didn't mention the abnormality of the Jin Dan. After all, his master had always acted like he didn't care much about it. You really do have an affinity with the 9 words formula. Geezer sure sighed and chuckled. It's good that you didn't mention it. Those guys are so arrogant. Damn, master, you're a respected senior. How can you have the same bad thoughts as a child like me? Lu Qing complained. He chuckled and said, Master, you have to tell me about the military's reaction. He didn't have to wait here for a few days. Zhengyun Ancient City was such a big place that 2 or 3 days was the limit. It was hard to say when the military would realize something was wrong. Hey, you little brat, you're really asking for a beating. Go back and rest, then come to Wuyua province. The fighting formula still needs to be given to the military. You have to get the Emperor Yen force as soon as possible. Try to complete the sublimation of the 2 forces before you transform. Geezer sure smiled satisfactorily and instructed. Yes, master. Lu Qing answered cheerfully. When he hung up, he saw Yenjika covering her mouth and giggling. Cheng, you two are indeed master and disciple. They really do have a tacit understanding in certain aspects. Lu Qing deliberately squinted at her. Are you mocking me for being as unreliable as my master? Yenjika turned her eyes and smiled. Her right hand made a phone call gesture. Hello, is this Coach Sure? Your disciple said you're unreliable. Hurry up and get rid of this evil creature. Lu Qing silently added the second half of the sentence for his wife. After the girl went to bed, he stood up and began to pack his luggage. He had no doubt that the military could find old Nanny Chiu. Large local forces might have 2 or 3 inhuman mighty ones and mini Dan stage masters, so they couldn't be underestimated. However, their numbers were too small, and their members were biased and monotonous. Unlike the military, they could find people who were good at fighting and good at tracking. That was why they had the confidence to not show up and watch their game, with a smile. Under such circumstances, how could old Nanny Chiu, who was only a dabbler in concealment, escape? At 2:30 in the afternoon, 2 strong men, one tall and one short, directly broke into number 15 Wanhe Street, ignoring the surveillance around them. Feng Fakue and Wan Shengjiang, who had returned in vain in the morning, hurried over with Huang Zihua and Hou Yulin. They were on high alert and looked on indifferently. The 2 men kept a straight face and didn't care about the gazes on them. They searched carefully from outside to inside. After repeating the same thing over and over again, they suddenly stopped in their tracks and stopped somewhere in the living room. They looked at each other and nodded slightly. The tall man suddenly squatted down and pounded the ground with his right hand, as if he was pounding medicine. Bam! Orange-red flames gathered in his hand and exploded when he pounded the ground, creating a shockwave that penetrated inside. Inhuman. Feng Fakue and Wan Xingjiang's pupils shrank, and their expressions became more solemn. Where did this inhuman mighty one come from? Ice God sect? That's not right. He used fire. Just as the hearts of the 2 groups of people slowly sank, the ground that was hit by the tall man suddenly softened, as if it had turned into a swamp. A slightly pale and wrinkled hand suddenly stretched out, leading to an old woman that everyone was familiar with. Her expression was gloomy as she muttered to herself, "You're right. I still couldn't escape." Old Nanny Chiu? She didn't escape at all. She had been hiding underground all this time. Huang Zihua and Hou Yulin were stunned at first, and then they were filled with regret. She actually had such a supernatural ability and means. If we had thought of this earlier, we wouldn't have been beaten to the ground by these 2 mighty ones. The tall man and the short man looked at each other and showed a relaxed and complacent smile. The tall man turned to old Nanny Chiu and said, "We can leave the rest of your business to the police. But where is the object with the word Do inscribed on it?" Old Nanny Chiu looked at him strangely and then she laughed. "Someone has taken it away." Who? Who took it? The tall man and the short man's smiles froze as they asked anxiously. Feng Fakue and the others were stunned and looked at each other. Someone came earlier? Who? Who? Old Nanny Chiu thought for a while and said, "A young man of medium height, wearing black clothes. He looks quite energetic. He came here last night." Came here last night. A name suddenly popped up in everyone's mind. Lu Qing. After getting rid of the surveillance, Lu Qing got on the bus leaving Jingyan Ancient City. It didn't take long for him to receive a call from his master and know what had happened there. Although it wasn't detailed enough, It was easy to imagine that he was amused for 5 minutes and typed a long message to Yenjika. At this moment he suddenly thought of something. He clicked on the military's rapid march, who was in charge of contacting him. Scratching head and smiling expression. Can you do me a favor? I still owe old Nanny Chio 600 yuan for the jade pendant. Can you help me? I'll transfer the money to you via QQ. He was quite nervous when he sent the message, expecting a reply of F***CK your mother. But Rapid March was quite restrained. After a few seconds of silence he replied with one word. Okay. Lu Qing heaved a sigh of relief and looked up. He happened to see the young couple he met on the way to the bus. They were also going back today. Lu Qing looked around and found that there were no more seats connected to each other. He stood up leisurely, pushed his black-rimmed glasses, and waved at them with a smile. Come on, sit here. I'll let you. Seeing his bright and friendly smile, the young couple looked at each other in surprise and felt that there were more good people in this world. After staying at home for a few days, Lu Qing, whose longing had almost turned into impulsiveness, set off on his journey again. He flew to Wuyue province to see his master. Give me the item of the fighting formula later and familiarize yourself with the illustration of the ice spirit force, said Geysersher casually. Oh, by the way, do you want to participate in a competition? The champion's prize is more than 5 million yuan. What competition? Lu Qing, who was eager to make money, asked. He couldn't practice the fighting formula with the jade pendant, but he could write one for the military since he had deepened his understanding. As for the effect and how long it would take for the jade pendant to lose its charm, that was another matter altogether. Geysersher laughed. The King of Youth tournament of 4 countries doesn't include our country. It's not broadcasted in our country either. This time, we're invited to participate in the competition with 4 wild cards. Young fighters under the age of 23 who aren't physical invulnerability. If you want to participate and use a different style of fighting to complete your transformation, I can help you get a spot. When? Which countries? Lu Cheng's heart skipped a beat. Dongying, Miluo, Xinxiang and Nanjing. August 12th to August 27th. Geysersher said with a smile. Other than the champion, the top 8 also have a lot of prize money. I don't know if Peng Liyun and Runli will go. Miluo and Nanjing used to be vassals of China and had deep ties with China. Okay. Lu Qing nodded. He looked at Geysersher and said seriously, Master, I want to participate. Chapter 448. Sure. Geysersher thought for a moment and added, Don't embarrass me. Miluo, Xinxiang and Nanjing were the places where he had spent most of his time between the war-torn zones in China. He had plenty of acquaintances and friends. Master, do you have so little confidence in me? Lu Qing lampooned. He knew Shi Zhengwo's pride was at work again. After a dozen seconds of silence, Lu Qing asked curiously, Master, what kind of young experts are there in these 4 countries? How would I know? Why would an old man like me care about these juniors? Geysersher replied with a look of disdain. Anyway, there are definitely Inhumans but not many of them. Alright, hurry up and give me the fighting formula. Okay. Lu Qing had already observed the layout of his senior sister's house. As soon as he finished speaking, he bounced into the study. He unfolded the rice paper, pressed it with a paperweight, picked up the brush, and dipped it in ink. He took a deep breath, calmed his heart, and focused his mind. In his mind, he sketched out every stroke of the fighting character. Explosiveness, strength, dominance, vigor, and an unyielding spirit leaped out. His wrist hovered and the brush pressed down. The ink burned brightly as if it was about to burst out of the white paper and soar into the sky. When he was done, Lu Qing nodded in satisfaction as he looked at the spirited ink. This is much better than my usual signature. However, Meng Qi's energy, Qi spirit, and will had not yet reached the level of connecting with heaven and earth. The charm of the depiction could not be stabilized as time passed. At most 3 months, at least 1 month, this Dou character could no longer be used for visualization and practice. It could only be like the Qian character he wrote for Wang Su, suppressing certain emotions with the remaining feelings until it completely returned to normal after a few years. Anyway, I'll just write it for them when it's no longer effective. Besides, with the Queen of Thought and the Divine Enchanter of Sin Flames level, they should be able to master it within a month. Lu Cheng's thoughts wandered. He picked up the rice paper on the table, walked into the living room, and handed it to Geyser with a smile. Master, this is the fighting formula. That's it. Geyser asked in astonishment. Where's the fighting formula I got from old Nanny Chio? From his expression, Lu Cheng interpreted the meaning of your King kidding me. He felt embarrassed and smiled. Master, old Nanny Chio's item is half broken. I restored the charm by myself, just like how I comprehended the attainment formula from the notes of Shushan's study. As he spoke, he scrolled through his phone and found the photo he had taken for Yenjika. He had left the jade pendant at home, and planned to bring it to Songqing in September. When he went to America, he would give it to his little fairy as a souvenir. Geyser glanced at it, coughed twice, and resumed his, I've seen everything attitude. Like I said, you and the 9 words formula are connected by fate. You can say that the Longhu Immortal passed it on to you. As he spoke, he put away Lu Cheng's fighting formula and changed the topic. Since you're here, you can go through the formalities and get a visa to America. Once the quota is approved, we'll deal with the King of Youth League. For the next few days, you should train hard here and suppress the transformation. Try to grasp the basics of the visualization of Ice Spirit Force as soon as possible. Speaking of this, he took out a rolled-up atlas from his pocket and said jokingly, This is my legacy. This is a memento of your master when I was at my peak. Don't lose it, you brat. Originally, I was going to lend you grandmasters for you to visualize, but after thinking about it for a while, martial arts have evolved for so many years. His comprehension, is a little unsuitable. It's better to use mine. Master, you're already able to make a visualization atlas that can be handed down from generation to generation. Lu Cheng exclaimed in both astonishment and admiration. Isn't that obvious? Back then, I was only one step away from entering the forbidden area. Geyser's eyes were filled with pride. Lu Cheng didn't hide his admiration and reached out to take the atlas. As soon as he held it, he felt that the paper that carried the visualization of Ice Spirit Force was so light that it seemed weightless. It was like the emptiness of nothingness that couldn't even retain a trace of heat. All that was left was absolute and eternal coldness, darkness, and loneliness. At this moment, Lu Cheng's thoughts seemed to have drifted into the boundless coldness without a trace of light. After some time, he came back to his senses and saw his master's smiling face. Ice Spirit Holy Light Atlas. Ice Spirit Holy Light Atlas. Lu Cheng nodded slightly and unfolded the atlas in his hand. He saw that it was filled with flowing sparkling light. The light against the darkness was dreamy, beautiful, and pure, but it gave off a feeling of loneliness, darkness, and extreme coldness. Geyser smiled and said, Ice Spirit Force will be formed when the Ice Spirit Force is connected to the Ice Spirit Holy Light diagram. When the transformation is completed, the force will be close to instinct. Only the Ice Spirit Holy Light diagram is needed, which can be used together with the eruption of Dan Force. Lu Cheng took a deep breath and felt the joy of finally coming into contact with top-level martial arts. This wasn't something that could be mastered easily. It couldn't be mastered in 10 to 20 minutes like the 9 words formula. It required a certain amount of time to succeed. For this, he had to suppress the transformation of his root pulp. If he had known, he would have practiced Ice Spirit Force and Emperor Yen Force in advance. However, Master probably didn't expect him to complete the crucial breakthrough so quickly and reach the inhuman stage. Sigh. Was it because of my exaggeration that Master was unreliable? Lu Cheng repented for 2 minutes. In the next few days, he only went out to handle the procedures. Most of his free time was spent studying and comprehending the Ice Spirit Holy Light Atlas. Based on his understanding of the cold and his 2 years of experience in the ice sect, he gradually gained some insights. After settling the procedures for leaving the country, Lu Cheng finally got his hands on the Emperor Yen Atlas before the 4-nation tournament. Its charm faded quickly, the kind that wouldn't take more than 10 days. It seemed to be a little revenge from the military. This atlas was the exact opposite of the Ice Spirit Holy Light Atlas. Although it was only a piece of paper, it felt heavy when held in one's hand. It was as though countless dust particles had accumulated on it. When it finally exceeded the critical point, it collapsed and ignited everything, spewing out unimaginably hot flames. On the atlas was a drawing of a god wearing a tall crown and ancient robes. The core was a very dense mass that spread out layers of flames of different colors. They formed a ceremonial robe, majestic and terrifying. Combined with the prairie fire atlas from before, he could master Emperor Yen force. Alright brat, hurry up and practice. Once you've mastered both ice and fire, you can undergo the transformation, Gizershur instructed. Gizershur reminded him, go to Huahai tomorrow and meet up with the others at Haidong Airport. This is the contact number. Although it's an individual competition, we still have to go together as a team. Hey, if you don't go, you won't understand. The host this time was Shengxiang's capital, Fulua. Master, who else is participating? Lu Qing inquired curiously. He wondered if there was anyone he knew. Gizershur chuckled, then suddenly put on a straight face and said, I didn't ask. Oh. Lu Qing tactfully returned to his room and packed his luggage. Then he took out his phone and sent a message to Yenjika. I'm going to Huahai. Who would have thought that my first overseas trip would be to Xinjiang instead of America? The message was like a stone sinking into the ocean. It was midnight there. Lu Qing quietly watched for a few minutes, then felt a surge of longing that was hard to get rid of. After that, he contacted the other party, confirmed the details, and booked the high-speed train ticket. When it was almost nighttime, Yenjika woke up and said, Chung, I can't watch your match live again. Good thing we can find online resources in America. Haha, that's good. I can't understand much of my opponent's information. I'm a little unsure. Lu Chung replied humbly, but his spirits were lifted. The next day, he tried to understand Emperor Yen force, but without a doubt he didn't gain much. After breakfast, Lu Qing carried his luggage and headed to the high-speed train station. He arrived at Haidong Airport before noon. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon he met the leader of this competition, Zhong Ningtao, at the departure hall. Alright, wait a few more minutes. They said they'll be here soon. Zhong Ningtao had a slick-back hairstyle. He was of average height and had a kind smile. Okay. Lu Qing didn't rush to ask who else was there. He took out his phone and reported to his wife. Meet up. Looking forward to teammates. Just as he sent the message, he sensed something and turned to the other side. He saw a young man in a white t-shirt and casual pants walking over with his luggage. He had a clean smile and a leisurely temperament. His eyes seemed to have just returned from a long journey. It was Peng Liyun. Chapter 449. Peng Liyun. He's going as expected. It's really the king of Youth League this time. The thought flashed across Lu Cheng's mind. He raised his right hand and was about to greet him. He wanted to exchange some pleasantries about Peng Liyun's condition, but remembered that he was the one who had caused Peng Liyun's most serious injury. Greeting him was akin to taunting and mocking him. He smiled and squeezed out a word. Hi. His opponent from a few months ago had suddenly become his teammate. Hello. Peng Liyun approached and waved calmly. I thought you might come. Lu Qing laughed and said, to broaden my horizons and strengthen my foundation. After he finished speaking, he waited for Peng Liyun's response. However, all of a sudden, an inexplicable silence filled the air. Lu Qing looked over in puzzlement, only to find the refreshed and clean Peng Liyun standing there. His eyes were unfocused, as if he had gone on a mental journey in an instant. He didn't stumble at all and completely ignored Lu Qing. This is King awkward. Lu Qing, who lacked experience in interacting with others, couldn't help but laugh dryly. He turned to Zhong Ningtao and pretended to be normal. He's just like that. Don't mind him. Anyway, it's very consistent with the rumors. Zhong Ningtao shrugged his shoulders like an American and replied with a smile. I know. Hence, he wasn't in a hurry to greet him. Lu Qing was about to change the topic and ask about the other two teammates when Peng Liyun suddenly recovered from the blackout state. He looked at Lu Qing thoughtfully and said, I'll participate in the nationals again. Lu Qing nodded and replied with a smile, Me too. As soon as he finished, he saw Peng Liyun sitting next to him. His eyes were wandering again. His phone is just for show. I heard that he wants to play games too. Lu Qing thought to himself. He saw the door open at the top of the nearest elevator. A young man with long hair and headphones walked out. He was also a martial artist that Lu Qing knew, and Chao Yang, who had joined the Shanghai Club and was personally taught by the Queen of Thought. And Chao Yang glanced at them and said with a surprised smile, "You're not going for a competition, right? You're going to challenge them." The two real heavenly sons of China were going for a competition together. Before Lu Qing could answer, Zhong Ningtao, who was sitting on the other side of him, said with a smile, "That's good, that's good. That's why they dared to give us wild cards. Otherwise, why didn't they invite us in the past few years? The Japanese are so prideful. If they don't have any confidence, they'd rather play by themselves behind closed doors. Why would they take the initiative to find someone to ruin their business?" "Are there any experts over there?" Lu Qing asked curiously. He had investigated the situation of the martial artists in Japan, Shengxiang, and other countries. However, due to the language barrier, he could only look at a few external websites. His understanding was quite superficial, and he could only have a general impression. Zhong Ningtao said with a smile, "Strong is only relative. This competition is open to anyone under the age of 23. It's normal for every country to have one or two inhuman geniuses, but in terms of age and potential, they can't compare to you. We've been keeping an eye on them and collecting information. I've already sorted it out, and we'll send it to you when we arrive at Fulua." "Okay." And Chaoyang nodded calmly. After joining the Shanghai Club, under the personal tutelage of the Queen of Thought, he had made rapid progress. He felt confident that he would be able to break through to the inhuman stage in the next year, which was before he was 23 years old. Therefore, he did not have any psychological trauma when encountering such an enemy. Lu Cheng's blood was boiling with excitement. He couldn't wait to experience the martial arts of other countries and spar with their geniuses. Moreover, due to communication issues, it would be difficult to understand each other in this competition like in China. There would be more surprises and surprises. Well, if the information provided by the leader wasn't detailed enough, he could ask Unparalleled Dragon King in the group later to see if he had more information. Sounds interesting. Peng Liyun had come back from his days at some point, and said with interest. Hearing his words, Lu Qing couldn't help but complain to himself. Could this guy be a cyborg? He's in power-saving mode when he's not fighting or learning. Well, it's very possible. They weren't familiar with each other, and they weren't extroverted like Kai Zhongming. After chatting for a few minutes, Peng Liyun went back to daydreaming. And Chaoyang put on his headphones and focused on enjoying the music. Lu Cheng and the leader, Zhong Ningtao, were left looking at each other. Luckily, Lu Cheng was someone who had been influenced by Talker for a long time. He didn't let the atmosphere become awkward. After waiting for a while, the fourth member still didn't appear. Zhong Ningtao stood up and looked around. He didn't find anything. Should I call and ask? "Oh right, who is it?" Lu Cheng finally asked the question that he had forgotten. "You guys know each other, Renli." Zhong Ningtao took out his phone and wondered if he should urge the genius girl. "Renli? This is really the strongest team." Lu Cheng was shocked. He thought that Renli, who had almost completed her transformation, would focus on stabilizing herself and wouldn't join in the fun. Who knew that she would join in? Well, the inhuman stage belonged to the internal division of the Dan stage. The martial arts they practiced were not much different from when they were at 6th pin. Renli had already mastered what she needed to master. As for what she hadn't mastered, she wouldn't be able to master in such a short time. Just like himself, he had already mastered all the martial arts below physical invulnerability of the Ice Sect. Even though there were more than 100 Dan stage kung fu styles, there were only 20 to 30 styles that were actually needed to be practiced. The rest were all created by predecessors and improved upon. Furthermore, the improved versions were re-recorded as new styles. That was why there were so many kung fu styles. For example, the 26th style of the Ice Sect, Ice Burning, was an improved version of the 112th style, Snow Burning, and was placed at the top of the list when the kung fu was rewritten. Renli, and Chaoyang took off his headphones. He was surprised and amused. "Leader, you should give her a call. Otherwise, we won't be able to wait." As one of Renli's old rivals, he knew her better than Lu Cheng and Zhong Ningtao. On the other side, Peng Liyun had also come back to his senses. He nodded in agreement. "All right." Zhong Ningtao dialed the number. After a few seconds, he heard Renli's voice. "Hello. Hello, Renli. I'm Zhong Ningtao, your leader. I contacted you 2 days ago. Where are you now?" After introducing himself, Zhong Ningtao went straight to the point. After a moment of silence, a calm voice came from the phone. "Leader, I think I'm lost." Lost? Zhong Ningtao was dumbfounded. He almost forgot to think. After a few seconds, he said hurriedly, "Hurry up and ask the people next to you to confirm your current location." He knew that Renli had a bad sense of direction, but he didn't expect her to be this bad. After a moment, Renli answered without any anxiety or anger. "They said I'm in T2. "They said." Zhong Ningtao's mouth twitched. He hurriedly said, "We're in T1. Hurry up and come over." "Don't know." And Chaoyang and Peng Liyun tried to stop her. Only Lu Cheng was stunned. Was Renli's sense of direction terminal? "Ha." Zhong Ningtao turned around blankly and looked at the two who spoke. "Leader, you should go and pick her up. Otherwise, she might have left the airport." And Chaoyang smiled helplessly. Having a bad sense of direction wasn't scary. It was knowing that they had a bad sense of direction, but they were confident and took the initiative to lead the way. Unfortunately, Renli belonged to the latter. Okay. Zhong Ningtao was speechless. He asked Renli to ask for her current location and search for her. After about 20 minutes, Lu Cheng and the others finally saw Renli in an orange t-shirt and denim shorts. "Hello." The delicate doll-like girl nodded politely. Lu Cheng, Peng Liyun and Chaoyang looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief. They then greeted her back. Lu Cheng took the opportunity and sent a message to Yan Zheka with a proud expression. "My teammates this time are Peng Liyun, Renli and Chaoyang. The strongest heavenly team." At this time it was still midnight in America. Once everyone had gathered, they used their passports to get their tickets and queued up to go through the security check. They waited for half an hour in the VIP lounge before boarding the plane. Since they were in the first class, they were the first to enter. Then Lu Cheng saw Renli dragging her suitcase and staring straight ahead. She didn't look back and didn't even look at the seat number beside her. Heh. He twitched his mouth and reminded her. "Renli here." As Lu Cheng spoke, Peng Liyun and Chaoyang and Zhong Ningtao also stopped her. Renli stopped and looked at where they were pointing. She showed an embarrassed expression and ran back with small steps to put her luggage in the seat above. After she sat down, Lu Cheng glanced at the terminally ill young lady. He then looked at Chaoyang, who was wearing headphones and had entered his own world, and Peng Liyun, who was sitting on his left. He didn't know what he was thinking, but he completely ignored the stewardess greetings. His heart suddenly skipped a beat. Damn it, I can't be the only normal person in this heavenly team, right? These three guys don't seem reliable no matter how I look at them. Thinking of this, he picked up his phone and complained to his wife. At this moment, Yenjika suddenly popped up and replied, "Hey! Haha, Brother Cheng, you can do it. Pft, why are you awake? Don't delay your classes tomorrow." Lu Cheng replied happily. "Can't I wake up in the middle of the night?" Yenjika replied. The two of them immediately started chatting happily. After a few minutes, Peng Liyun, Renli and Chaoyang all looked at Lu Cheng, who was smiling and playing with his phone. They all had the same expression that Lu Cheng had when he looked at them just now. After successfully arriving at Fulua, the capital of Shengxiang, Lu Cheng and the others got on the bus and arrived at the hotel. After checking in, Renli took the lead and led the way to the restaurant. She was grabbed by the leader, Zhong Ningtao. The consequence of Zhong Ningtao grabbing her shoulder was that she used absolute reaction and threw him to the ground. While Lu Cheng was mourning for him, on the other side of the hotel lobby, two men who looked like Japanese were observing them and comparing them to the photos on their phones. "They are the strongest ones," said one of the Japanese men in a low voice. Chapter 450. I'm sorry. After throwing Zhong Ningtao to the ground with a suplex, Runli came back to her senses. She clasped her hands together and apologized repeatedly. Luckily, she wasn't the kind of person who would go all out and hold back her strength. Otherwise, with their skills, Zhong Ningtao would have broken a few bones. At this moment, he only felt a little dizzy. Rubbing his sore spots, he got up slowly and forced a smile. It's nothing. I've been through a lot too. Oh my, this girl looks so harmless, but she's actually so scary. Lu Qing leaned over and glanced at the opposite side of the hall from the corner of his eye. He lowered his voice and said, Leader, there seem to be two Japanese looking at us. In the eyes of other countries, Chinese and Japanese were very similar and hard to differentiate. Single eyelids and short stature weren't important labels. However, to the two countries, they were easy to distinguish. It was as though there was a distinct feeling between them. Haha, it's nothing. They like to collect information like this, explained Zhong Ningtao. They are very serious in their work, but also very rigid. Our situation was reported to the organizing committee in the morning. Shengxiang's people didn't even come to confirm it, but they did. After a few words, he looked at the watch on his wrist and said, There's no time difference. It's 6:30 now. Go back to your room and rest for a while. We'll gather here at 7 and go out to find food. We don't have anything to do for the next few days, so we can relax and have fun while waiting for the competition to start. Oh right. What do you want to eat? Any suggestions? Anything. Peng Liyun answered casually. His gaze swept across the golden Buddha statues in the hotel, and he fell into deep thought. Anything is fine. And Chaoyang pulled a suitcase with one hand and put the other in his pocket. With his headphones on, he leisurely observed the exotic guests coming and going. I'm not a picky eater really. Runli caught on to the main point. Zhong Ningtao looked at Lu Qing sadly, and was delighted to see him take out his phone and open the review app. Leader, I'll look around and see if there's any good food nearby. We can discuss it later. When traveling, you can't let down good food. Anyway, Ku and I are the kind of bored tourists who value each other more than good food more than local customs, and local customs more than beautiful scenery. Okay, add me on WeChat. Zhong Ningtao was very touched. Most of the time, Lu Cheng's WeChat was just for show, but recently the non-students he knew seemed to like it more, so he gradually got used to it. He even started to feel that it was quieter and quieter, so he wanted Ku to use it more often. After scanning the QR code, they escorted Runli into the elevator. They didn't leave until they saw her enter the apartment. Lu Qing put down his luggage, sat by the bed, and browsed through the delicacies around him. After a few minutes of discussion with the team leader, they decided on a Shengxiang cuisine. After doing all this, he found that Zhong Ningtao had already sent the opponent's information to his mailbox. He downloaded it and browsed it. Kaori Karasawa, 22 years old. Successor of the Shinzai sect in Japan. 6th Dan black belt, equivalent to a 5th pin in China. Developed Qi at the end of last year, equivalent to the inhuman stage. Hailed as a beautiful girl genius that appears once every 3,000 years in Japan. However, they always like to exaggerate. Compared to Peng Liyun at the same age, she's still lacking. There were many sects in Japanese martial arts. Under the auspices of the country, the white belt represented amateurs, while the black belt represented samurai. 9th Dan was the highest, and 1st Dan was the lowest. Among them, 8th Dan and 9th Dan were equivalent to the top 3 ranks in China. At the end of last year, 21.5 years old, almost at the inhuman stage. What a formidable opponent. Lu Qing thought as he continued scrolling. He saw Kaori Karasawa's photo and the introduction of the Shinzai sect. She was indeed a pretty girl. She wasn't very tall, just a little over 1.6 meters. She had baby fat on her face, round and adorable. Lu Qing scanned through and looked to the back. Muko Yamashita, almost 24 years old. Founder of the extreme Hadu sect in Japan. 5th Dan black belt. Developed Hadu in May, equivalent to the inhuman stage. This was a tall man with long arms. He had thick eyebrows, rugged looks and shocking muscles. Waku, a direct disciple of Shengxiang country's Theravada Buddhism. An ascetic monk with the title of Arhot. 6th Dan black belt. Developed Hadu in May, equivalent to the inhuman stage. This was a tall man with long arms. He had thick eyebrows, rugged looks and shocking muscles. Waku, a direct disciple of Shengxiang country's Theravada Buddhism. An ascetic monk with the title of Arhot. At the age of 23, he has already mastered the 16 insight wisdom, to the walking insight wisdom, which is equivalent to the inhuman stage. Vagar, son of Miluo's warlord, possesses the supernatural ability of thunder and lightning, cultivates Miluo's martial arts and is extremely domineering. 23 and a half years old. As Miluo doesn't have a standard evaluation system, his strength can only be said to be on par with Kaori Karasawa. He is one of the two most likely to win this competition. Banam, representative of Nanjing. At such a young age, he is already the sect leader of Jahi Quan. Vicious in his attacks, ruthless to others and even more ruthless to himself. Their martial arts path is similar to our country's. He has just broken through to the inhuman stage, 22 years old. Shengxiang, Miluo and Nanjing are close to war-torn areas. The political situation in the country is often unstable. One has a king, one is a warlord, and one is a military government. Therefore, the status of women in the country is lower, and it isn't easy for them to practice martial arts. Lu Qing swiped his finger and flipped through the pages quickly. He remembered the looks of the three of them. Waku was sallow and skinny. He was barefooted and wore a red robe. He didn't seem to be any different from most of the ascetic monks. However, his eyes were deep and dark, as though they were hiding a pure land of self. Vagar was wearing a blue general's uniform. He was tall and strong with a cold face. Banam was less than 1.7 meters tall. His skin was tanned and as strong as steel. His wrists and legs were wrapped in white bandages. Other than the five of them, Zhong Ningtao also listed a few martial artists with potential from the four countries. Lu Qing took a quick glance and took his phone with international data package. He pocketed his wallet and took the elevator back to the first floor. He waited in the lobby for his teammates to meet up. This time, Zhong Ningtao didn't make any mistakes. He knocked on Run Li's door and let her down personally. He didn't want this young lady to get lost in the sea of people in the hotel again. Let's eat here. Zhong Ningtao showed Peng Liyun and the rest the name of the restaurant that he and Lu Qing had decided on. Okay. And Chaoyang and the rest went with the flow and didn't have any objections. When they were about to leave the hotel, Lu Qing couldn't help but ask when he saw the tanned, short, and skinny Xinjiang people outside. Leader, do you speak Xinjiang language? Zhong Ningtao looked at him, then at Peng Liyun, Run Li, and in Chaoyang who had the same question. He gave a look that said, "How can you ask such a childish question?" "I don't know. Don't know. Lu Qing, who originally thought that he and the leader were the most reliable in the team, was dumbfounded. Even the usually calm Run Li and Peng Liyun were stunned for a moment. Haha, don't know, don't worry. Everyone here more or less knows English. I'm a professional. Zhong Ningtao wiped his swept-back hair and smiled proudly. Look, didn't I arrange everything properly when we took a taxi to check in? That's true. Lu Qing heaved a sigh of relief, and Chaoyang pondered for a few seconds, then suddenly opened his mouth and asked directly, Leader, you've been to Shengxiang before, right? Zhong Ningtao gave a dry laugh and answered sincerely, Nope. Then he added, Don't worry. I'm on good terms with the people in the embassy here. That's why they sent me here. Oh. Lu Qing, Peng Liyun, Ren Li, and An Chaoyang looked at each other and saw the confusion in each other's eyes. This might be a little unreliable. Why don't we just stay in the hotel and eat instant noodles? Under Zhong Ningtao's persuasion, and because they were skilled and bold, they continued on their journey. Following the navigation on the map, they found a restaurant about 700 meters away that had a rich Xinjiang atmosphere. The architecture here was influenced by Buddhist aesthetics. There were many sculptures, and they liked to paint. It was quite unique. Click, click, click. Lu Qing took out his phone and took a few pictures. He sent them to Yenjika, hoping that she would feel what he felt when she woke up. Click, click, click. Runli was also taking pictures. Half of it was the scenery, and the other half was a selfie. After a while, she was about to leave the restaurant in the opposite direction and fly away. Luckily, Peng Liyun noticed in time and stopped her. Click, click, click. And Chaoyang held the digital camera and focused on it, as if he was sculpting a piece of art. Why aren't you taking pictures? Zhong Ningtao leaned towards Peng Liyun curiously. Then he realized something and said, "That's right. Someone with a carefree personality like you wouldn't like to take pictures. He would rather be in a daze." Peng Liyun tilted his head and looked at him. He said calmly, "The camera is broken." Zhong Ningtao's mouth twitched. He decided to talk to Lu Cheng. He had just taken 2 steps when he saw Lu Cheng turn around and smile at Chaoyang, who had just finished taking pictures. "Can you share some pictures with me later? I didn't take very good pictures." "You didn't take very good pictures? Then why did you take so many pictures just now?" Zhong Ningtao took a deep breath and walked to the restaurant. With his fluent English, he managed to get a table for 6. Lu Cheng sat down, picked up the menu and opened it. He was surprised to find a Chinese translation. So considerate. And Chaoyang sat sincerely beside him. There were many people around and the environment was very noisy. At least a third of the tourists here are from our country. How can we not have a Chinese menu? Zhong Ningtao said with a smile. He waved his hand to the waiter and started to order. Halfway through the order, the petite girl with brown skin suddenly said a lot of things. Lu Cheng and the others looked at each other. "Can you speak English?" Zhong Ningtao asked in English. The waiter nodded and said a lot more. Lu Cheng felt that with his hearing, he could only understand a few words. "Leader, what does he mean?" Renli pulled Zhong Ningtao and asked in a low voice out of habit. Zhong Ningtao replied in English with a confused face, "I don't understand. This waiter's English accent is too strong. It's too local. I'm dumbfounded. Let me try." Good student Peng Liyun started to use English. However, after a while of gesticulating, he still failed to communicate. And Chaoyang and Renli were eager to give it a try. They both used exam-oriented English to try to help, but they all failed miserably. As their last hope, Lu Cheng took a deep breath and planned to show the oral English he had practiced for Ke. After a while, the waiter was at a loss. Just as they were about to use the translation software, the girl asked timidly, "Do you speak Chinese?" Lu Cheng, Peng Liyun and the others all understood this sentence. They were stunned for a while before they blurted out, "You speak Chinese?" "Yes, my father is Chinese. There are a lot of Chinese tourists here. Staff who speak Chinese are very popular." The girl smiled and answered, feeling a little awkward. Lu Cheng, Renli, Peng Liyun, and Chaoyang and Zhong Ningtao, who were sweating from ordering food, looked at each other and suddenly burst into laughter. Their bodies were shaking nonstop, and they were about to cry. They suddenly felt that the unfamiliarity and isolation between them had disappeared. Chapter 451. After laughing for a while, Zhong Ningtao picked up the menu again and ordered in Chinese according to the speed of their conversation. The petite waitress listened with a blank face. In the end, she smiled embarrassedly and said, Can you slow down? Too fast, too fast. I don't understand." Her Chinese expression was rather shaky. "Okay." Lu Cheng and the rest laughed. Zhong Ningtao slowed down his speech and described the dishes word by word. This time, the conversation was very smooth. Everyone understood what the waitress was trying to say. She thought that the customers had ordered too much and some dishes were not special, so there was no need to waste their appetite. But for Lu Cheng and the rest, this was not a problem. They would only complain about too little, but not too much. Hence, they happily reached an agreement. Lu Cheng, Peng Liyun, Renli and Chaoyang and Zhong Ningtao looked at each other and laughed at the same time when the brown-skinned waitress put away the menu, took notes and turned to leave. It's not easy to order in a foreign country. There were many customers in this restaurant, but the food was served quickly. Plates were placed in front of Lu Cheng and the rest. "No need to wait. Let's eat first. If we eat one plate, we won't be able to fit another plate." Zhong Ningtao glanced at the crowded table and picked up his chopsticks. "Okay." Lu Cheng, Renli and Chaoyang replied in unison. They unlocked their phones and aimed at the delicious food. "We need to consecrate our food." Peng Liyun's chopsticks hovered for a moment. Just when Zhong Ningtao thought he was going to be the first to taste the food after the photo shoot, he smiled casually. "Let's add each other on QQ or WeChat later." "Huh. The rest were stunned. Remember to send me some photos. Peng Liyun looked straight ahead and replied with a smile. Compared to before, he was obviously more willing to talk and communicate. Let's just steal the photos. I'll post it, share it on WeChat and Weibo. And Chaoyang suggested seriously. Peng Liyun picked up the ice water and drank a mouthful. He cleared his throat and said, "Actually, that's what I used to do." But they were not familiar with each other, so he felt a little embarrassed. Apart from her tendency to daydream, and lazy personality, the big devil is quite easy to get along with. Lu Qing laughed to himself, lowered his head, and sent the photos of the food to Yenjika. He imitated her tone and said, "I'm helping you to improve your appetite for breakfast. We're husband and wife, so you're welcome." Shengxiang's dishes were mostly lemon sour, with a wide range of sweet, sour, and spicy flavors. Their grilled fish and other delicacies were cooked with spices and leaves that were rarely seen in Lu Qing and the rest. The first bite was strange, but after a few more bites, it seemed to be all right and had a unique style. The four big eaters and Zhong Ningtao, who had a huge appetite, had refreshed the waiter's view of the world after just one meal. In the past, they had met people with appetites comparable to Peng Liyun and Ren Li, but they had never seen so many people gathered together at one table. In the end, the chefs, who felt that their culinary skills had been greatly affirmed, came to the front hall and sincerely greeted Lu Qing and the rest. They also invited them to take photos as souvenirs. After paying the bill with his card, Zhong Ningtao remembered something. He opened his black briefcase and took out a few stacks of notes. "Here's the Shengxiang shield. 30,000 per person. This is for your daily expenses. You can swipe your UnionPay card at most places, and there's a discount. 1 yuan in China could be exchanged for a little over 7 Shengxiang shields." Lu Qing took the money and looked at the colorful notes. Then he heard Zhong Ningtao say, "You can go around here. This is a more prosperous area in Fuluo. Renli, you have to follow them, no follow me. You can't go alone. Also, you have morning exercises tomorrow, right? There's a quiet place on the left of the hotel. Renli, what time do you usually wake up?" "About 5:30. Renli volunteered. "Leader, it's okay. I won't get lost during morning exercises." Zhong Ningtao looked at her deeply and said, "I'll wake up at 5:30 as well." Before Renli could insist, he continued, "There's a Shengxiang martial arts school nearby. Do you want me to book all the time in the morning?" "Yes," Lu Qing answered without hesitation. Peng Liyun, Ren Li and Chaoyang also said in unison, their eyes shining with anticipation. "You guys are really..." Zhong Ningtao couldn't help but laugh. What a good kid focused on martial arts. They took a stroll and walked in a circle. Under the bright night sky, they found the hotel they were staying at and returned to their own rooms to do their own things. Lu Qing glanced at his phone. Seeing that Ka hadn't replied, he put it down slowly and turned on his computer. Using the information provided by Zhong Ningtao, he found the corresponding website and started watching the match videos of Kaori Karasawa, Vagar and other opponents. After skimming through, he found that the highlights weren't detailed enough. He unlocked his phone and found Unparalleled Dragon King in the group chat. He opened the chat box and typed, old dragon, are you there? Just say what you want, no need to ask if I'm there," replied Unparalleled Dragon King. Lu Qing scratched his head and said, "Do you have detailed information on Kaori Karasawa, Muko Yamashita, Waku Vagar and Banam?" "Damn, you want to watch the King of Youth League? You know about this?" replied Unparalleled Dragon King with a shocked expression. "Is it strange to know?" replied Lu Qing with a confused expression. "Strange, very strange," replied Unparalleled Dragon King with a thumbs up. "Our country's martial arts is too strong and the competition is fierce. After I returned to China, I found that other than the international arena and professional competitions of a few big countries, everyone rarely pays attention to foreign martial arts and fighting. I didn't expect us to have a common interest. Haha, I just happened to be here." Lu Qing smiled through tears and admitted that he was just one of the big shots, in an attempt to dispel Unparalleled Dragon King's unnecessary excitement. "Oh, you're in Fulua?" asked Unparalleled Dragon King with a sudden realization. He subconsciously thought that Schrödinger's tiger was traveling with his girlfriend after meeting her parents. On the way, he found out about the King of Youth League and wanted to take a look. Yes, replied Lu Cheng without hiding anything. Not bad. If I didn't prefer to stay at home, I would have flown to Fulua, replied Unparalleled Dragon King. Unparalleled Dragon King replied. Laughing expression. All right, I'll send you a copy of the videos of those guys later. It's definitely better than what you can find yourself. If there's any behind-the-scenes footage or any details of the competition, you have to let me know immediately. Some of the matches can't be found. No problem, replied Lu Cheng with a wave. By the way, it seems like 4 wild cards were sent to our country this time. Did you see any mention of our 4 fighters on the posters and the pre-match program? Unparalleled Dragon King asked excitedly. Hey, you're right to ask me. Lu Cheng replied with a snickering expression. I know Peng Liyun, Run Li Lu Cheng and En Chaoyang. F***CK they're not giving Shengxiang and the other countries a chance to survive. Why are they so confident in giving wild cards? Asked Unparalleled Dragon King in surprise. He thought it was good enough to have a heavenly son of the era leading the team. I'm not sure about that. I also want to know why, replied Lu Cheng with a shrug. Unparalleled Dragon King sent an excited expression. Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the King of Youth League more and more. No, I have to tell little Changya and little Fan. Let's talk more during this time. Sure, talk to you later. Lu Cheng saw Yenjika's reply. Sending delicious food early in the morning. Cheng, the boat of our friendship has capsized, said Yenjika. So I fell into the river of love? Raised eyebrows and smirked expression. Who are you? I don't know you, replied Yenjika. After flirting for a few minutes, Lu Cheng started to talk about Peng Liyun and the others, completely unaware of what he was doing. I didn't expect them to be so easy to get along with. Speaking of this, Yenjika sent an emoji of covering her mouth and laughing. Cheng, you've joined the national team. Yes, the national team under the age of 24. When some of the international team challenge tournaments were held, countries would form teams to participate. Of course, you could also form your own team. Time flew by as they chatted and laughed. Lu Cheng said goodnight reluctantly and fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, he found the place the leader had told him about and saw Peng Liyun and En Chaoyang. He also saw Ren Li and Zhong Ningtao, who were late. After greeting each other, they each found a place to train. Lu Cheng continued to cultivate Ice Spirit Force and Emperor Yen Force and made slight progress. After training and breakfast, they went to the Shengxiang boxing gym booked by Zhong Ningtao and started to train. Peng Liyun thought for a while and said, Why don't we spar later? I can imitate Vagar's fighting style. He had seen the related videos. I'll try Xinjai Sect and Zahi boxing, said Renli. I'll imitate Waku, said En Chaoyang. Lu Cheng was at a loss at first, then came to a realization. He smiled and said, Then I can only work hard to be Muko Yamashita. This was the benefit of having strong teammates. Everyone could imitate opponents with different styles according to their own characteristics to increase the corresponding experience. After practicing for a while, Peng Liyun walked to the center of the gym. He swung his fists and legs a few times, creating electric sparks. Then he looked at Lu Cheng, Ren Li and En Chaoyang. He waved and smiled. Who's next? Just as the 4 wild cards were training hard, the round-faced Kaori Karasawa and the thick-browed Muko Yamashita were also watching the competition videos of Lu Cheng, Peng Liyun and the others. Not only them, but Vagar, Waku and Banam were also seriously studying the related videos in their spare time. Time flew. A few nights later, the King of Youth tournament officially kicked off. The 24 advanced martial artists, the 8 seeded fighters and the 4 wild cards would draw lots and fight each other. Chapter 452. The Shengxiang Stadium in Fulua was brightly lit and packed with people. It had the unique atmosphere of a crowded and passionate place. The competition will start with a double elimination format. There will be 1 round every day. Whoever loses 2 rounds will go home until the top 16 are left. Leader Zhong Ningtao explained the situation as he led Lu Cheng, Peng Liyun and the rest to their predetermined seats. It's almost the same as the provincial youth tournament last year. Lu Cheng nodded slightly. He observed the stadium as they walked and tried to be a good husband. Shengxiang was deeply influenced by the Buddhist culture. Golden statues of wisdom kings and arhats were placed around the venue. Some of them looked evil, some of them looked solemn, some of them looked bitter, and some of them had lowered eyebrows. Looking at them, one would inexplicably feel a sense of anxiety and trepidation. Under the suppression of these Buddha statues were 3 wide arenas in the shape of the Chinese character Tri. There were many swastikas engraved around the arenas, giving off a sense of tranquility, illusion, and detachment. One inside and one outside. The combination of these 2 feelings seemed to be able to affect the emotions of the fighters in the arena. The work of a master. And Chaoyang was listening to music with his headphones on, but he controlled his voice so that it was no different from normal. Peng Liyun returned from his daydream. He glanced over and laughed softly. This is the home field advantage. Those Buddha statues and those swastikas were probably the work of the eminent monks of Southern Buddhism. They were the enhanced version of the forwarding formula that Lu Cheng wrote for Wang Su. They were used to disrupt the minds and spirits of non-Theravada monks and create the most advantageous environment for themselves. Yeah. Renli took 2 steps forward and took a picture of the Buddha statues and the swastikas. She walked back to Zhong Ningtao, who looked like he was facing a formidable enemy. She said innocently, "Leader, I'm not blind. I can't see you guys. It's just a few steps. I won't get lost. It's always better to be safe than sorry." Zhong Ningtao replied earnestly. He felt exhausted from the past few days. Beside him, Lu Cheng was sending the picture he just took to Yanzhika and discussing the home field advantage with her. Ahem. Zhong Ningtao cleared his throat. We're about to enter the arena. Everyone, keep your spirits up. Oh right, the contestants who can enter this competition are mostly equivalent to rank 6 martial artists. All of you be careful. Don't be too careless. These are all geniuses from their countries, or former geniuses. Okay. Lu Cheng nodded solemnly, indicating that he understood. Theoretically speaking, he was only at the level of a top-notch rank 6. He had yet to truly step into the door of the inhuman stage and undergo a transformation. Therefore, when facing these strange contestants who did not know much about Kung Fu, they could not afford to be careless. Just as Peng Liyun was about to say something, the broadcast sounded. It was repeated in Shengxiang and English. It's our turn. Zhong Ningtao called out in a hurry. He straightened his back and stood in front of the team. Seeing this, and Chaoyang took off his earphones and hung them around his neck. Peng Liyun's gaze became more focused. Renli and Lu Cheng silently switched their phones to silent mode and stuffed them into their pockets. After more than 10 seconds, the impassioned melody of the national anthem rose. Lu Cheng and the rest, who were inexplicably excited, walked out of the passageway unhurriedly under Zhong Ningtao's lead. They entered the arena and headed for the VIP seats. Not long after he appeared in front of everyone, he suddenly felt a prickling sensation on his skin. Following the source of the prickling sensation, he saw a burly man with exaggerated muscles in the Japanese delegation. He was wearing a traditional samurai outfit and was looking at him with a deep gaze. Bam! Their gazes seemed to meet. Light gathered in Muko Yamashida's eyes, forming a white wave. It was so bright that Lu Cheng felt as though he was looking at a strong light. He narrowed his eyes slightly and his pupils suddenly darkened. It was as though there was a boundless starry sky in his eyes. The scarlet sun and sparkling stars swallowed all the external light as it rotated slowly. At the same time, Renli's heart skipped a beat. She followed Lu Cheng's gaze and happened to see a beautiful girl in an elegant kimono with exquisite makeup. Her round face was cute. Her eyes were like mirrors, and her aura was quiet and gentle. It was as though she was just an illusion. The current successor of Shinjai sect, Kaori Karasawa. Whoosh! A strong wind suddenly blew in the arena, blowing chaotically. No one knew where it came from and where it went. And Chaoyang also found inspiration and reacted as though he was reminded of the scenery. Instinctively, He turned his head and made eye contact with a skinny, yellow-robed monk in red robes. He felt his disgust and abandonment towards everything in the world. All illusions should be broken free from them. Water gushed out from his mind, containing a sense of vitality. It washed away and Chaoyang's melancholy and despair. What a powerful mental infection. And Chaoyang took a deep breath, retracted his gaze and looked at the other mighty ones. Beside him, Peng Liyun saw Vagar at first glance. He saw his cold face, his well-ironed blue general uniform, and the dancing electric snakes in his eyes. Crackle! A strange sound was heard in midair. The lights in the Shengxiang Stadium dimmed for a moment before returning to their former glory. Lu Qing shifted his gaze away from Muko Yamashita. His footsteps swept past Kaori Karasawa, Waku, and Vagar without the slightest hesitation. Feeling their unique aura, he relied on the secret assistance of the army formula and fighting formula to not be at a disadvantage. Finally, his gaze landed on the Nanjing delegation. He saw the Tan Banam sitting with his arms crossed. He was looking at the four of them coldly, like a wild beast staring at its prey. The national anthem stopped. Lu Cheng and the rest returned to their seats and sat down, no longer looking around. Vagar, Muko Yamashita and the rest also retracted their gazes. I really don't know what the Japanese Xinjiang are thinking, giving us 4 wild cards, said in Chaoyang softly as he ran his fingers through his half-length hair. Even with 4 countries combined, there would only be 5 Inhumans below the age of 24. Hearing this, Zhong Ningtao made a self-deprecating joke. Maybe they didn't expect us to be so rude. Yeah. Renli nodded slowly, as though she had taken his joke for the truth. She turned to Peng Liyun and the rest and asked curiously, "Why are you guys here?" "I've been at the Inhuman stage for a while now, and haven't had any actual combat experience. My hands are itching. Since there's such a good opportunity, I decided to come," replied Peng Liyun with a smile. "Aren't there so many Inhuman seniors in the Shangqing sect?" asked Lu Cheng in surprise. "Why wouldn't there be any actual combat experience?" The corners of Peng Liyun's mouth curled up as he laughed. "You also said that I'm a senior. Challenging a senior for no reason will lead to a scolding. My senior brothers and sisters of the same generation, as me rarely returned to the sect after I advanced. Seems like you're a demon in the Shangqing sect too." Lu Cheng was enlightened and mocked him in his mind. After their exchange, Renli took the initiative to speak. She smiled elegantly and said, "I've just completed my metamorphosis and want to use actual combat to get used to the Inhuman stage. That's why I signed up. I was sent here by my master to gain more experience so as to strengthen my foundation for the Inhuman stage in a year's time," replied in Chaoyang. What about you?" Renli looked at Lu Cheng. Peng Liyun and En Chaoyang were also waiting for his answer with interest. Now that everyone was more familiar with each other, Lu Cheng didn't go through the motions like he did at the airport. After thinking for a while, he nodded sincerely and said, "Need money." The surroundings suddenly became quiet. Lu Cheng felt that Peng Liyun and the rest were looking at him strangely, as though they were looking at something unbelievable. Just as he was about to speak, the lot drawing ceremony started, and a bunch of formalities went through. Taking out his phone secretly, Lu Cheng secretly took a photo and sent it to Yenjika. He also described to her how he felt when he made eye contact with Muko Yamashita and the rest. "You guys look pretty impressive," replied Yenjika with a smile. Yenjika sent an emoji with its hand covering its mouth and said, "I thought it was a bit strange when I saw that the organizing committee called you guys Team Stuck Abroad. Today, I browsed the forum and saw Unparalleled Dragon King's explanation. Then I figured it out. You guys are not Team Stuck Abroad, but Team Stuck Abroad. Especially you, the big pervert." Towards the end of her sentence, she seemed to have thought of something. Her pretty face turned red, and her eyes seemed to be both angry and happy. Lu Cheng felt something and calmed down. Snickering expression, he replied, "I don't agree with what others say, except for Little Fairy." While chatting, Unparalleled Dragon King came to him and said with anticipation, "Little Tiger, I've found a few resources but they only have a fixed broadcast of one arena. We'll be depending on you later." Remember to take a photo for the live broadcast. He implored with an expression of prostration. Sure, but I have other things to do. If it doesn't clash, it's fine. Lu Cheng was grateful to Unparalleled Dragon King for providing the video of the competition. He didn't reject him but gave him a heads up. If it really didn't work out, he could ask Peng Liyun or An Chaoyang for help. Not long after, the lot drawing ceremony officially started. There was only one way to avoid this double elimination round, and that was to not meet each other from the same country. First, Peng Liyun was picked and would face a boxer from Xinjiang. Then, An Chaoyang would face off against a mighty one from Miluo. After another minute, Run Li's name was called. Her opponent was a monk from Xinjiang, Fuaku. Lu Qing waited patiently. When it was nearing the end, he finally heard his name. China Lu Cheng. He adjusted his sitting position and saw that the guest had drawn his opponent. Japan, Ichii Sakata. Ichii Sakata? Lu Qing nodded thoughtfully. He recalled the information about this samurai in his mind. This was one of the 5 Inhumans that Zhong Ningtao had specially reminded of. He was also a disciple of the extreme Hadu sect, and a fellow disciple of Muko Yamashita. He used to be on par with Muko Yamashita and had supernatural abilities. He was gradually surpassed by Muko Yamashita, and was about to turn 24. He was still stuck at a bottleneck, and had no hope of advancing. I've been imitating Muko Yamashita for the past few days, and ended up against someone from the extreme Hadu sect. What a coincidence. Over at the Japanese representative team, Ichii Sakata, whose hair was dyed blonde, looked at the matchup with a solemn expression. He could almost imagine the headlines about him that would appear soon. Can the genius of the past return to glory? Chapter 453. After the drawing of lots, the 5 representatives returned to their respective changing rooms to prepare for the first round of double elimination. I'm so angry. Chung, your match will be broadcasted, but I have to go to class at that time. Yenjuka sent a message with a woof, I'm going to cry, emoji. Lu Chung sat on the bench in the changing room with his head down. He typed on his phone and comforted his wife with a patting head emoji. It's nothing. Just replay it later. I'll definitely win anyway. Yo Chung, you're getting better at bragging. Yenjuka said. Ichii Sakata has supernatural powers and can release waves. He's like a mini Muko Yamashita. He's definitely in the top 10 below the Inhuman stage. Then no one would dare to say they're the best below the Inhuman stage. Do you have so little confidence in me? Lu Qing replied with a hands-on-hips expression. Yenjuka replied with a blank expression. I know my brother Chung can transform at any time if he wants to. But isn't this accumulating good karma for you? Quick, apologize for not understanding your sister's good intentions. I'm sorry. Lu Qing couldn't hide his smile. Actually, I was just bragging just now. He said with a sigh while covering his face. Yenjuka almost spat out the milk in her mouth. She calmed down and replied with an emoji. Are you trying to make me laugh to death so you can inherit my Aunt Flower? Ji Mingyu looked at her daughter helplessly. I've taught you not to play with your phone when you're eating. You're getting out of hand. You're drinking milk and typing at the same time. Mom, I didn't have a phone to play with when I was young. Yenjuka quickly sat up and pointed out the problem. Ji Mingyu was momentarily speechless. After a few seconds of silence, she said, Get the point. Yes. Yenjuka ate quickly and gracefully, finishing her breakfast in a few bites. She wiped her mouth with a napkin, picked up her phone and unlocked it. Lu Qing replied with a silly smile. I admit that I'm stronger than Ichii Sakata, and I have that much confidence in myself. But since I haven't completed my transformation, the gap can't be too big. He still has a chance of winning, so I have to be cautious and give it my all. This concerns the cost of the plane ticket to see my fairy. It's good that you know. Yenjuka's mood was lifted, and the dimples on her cheeks were sweet and soft. How should I cheer you on later? I won't say anything that's too mushy. Kiss me. I feel like I'm back in the Warrior Sage Challenge tournament. Lu Qing replied with a snickering emoji. Suddenly, he felt a little sentimental and sighed. It was impossible for Ku to rush to the scene to cheer for him, chat with him on QQ, and cheer for him from afar. The only difference was that they were just friends at that time. Their feelings grew bit by bit as they progressed. But now, they had made a lifelong commitment to each other, and they didn't want their feelings to fade. Yeah. Yenjika pursed her lips and suddenly became quiet. She paused for a moment and gently typed a few words. Chung, I miss you. Looking at her own missed message, she paused for a few seconds before deleting it word by word. She was afraid that it would affect her husband's mood during the competition. Taking a deep breath, she replied with a blushing face. That's different. You earned money for yourself, but now you're here to see me. That's true. Lu Qing suddenly felt a little more motivated. After chatting for a while, Yenjika began to tie up her hair, put on her glasses, packed her bag and prepared to leave the house. Lu Qing lifted his head and saw Peng Liyun leaning against the wall opposite him. His eyes were unfocused, and no one knew what he was thinking about. And Chaoyang's body moved slightly, and his head nodded slightly. He was quietly intoxicated by the melody in his headphones. Renli was holding her phone in her hand, playing a video of her opponent that she had found. Her eyes, however, were looking at the floor, admiring the floor tiles with unique and exotic patterns. A bunch of salted fish. Lu Qing thought of this inexplicable phrase. He shook his head helplessly and flipped through the information on Ichiai Sakata stored in his phone. At this moment he heard two crisp claps. Zhong Ningtao clapped his hands, waking up the salted fish in front of him and attracting their attention. He cleared his throat and said, "This is the semi-finals of the national team. We've prepared uniform martial arts suits for all of you. Hurry up and change. There are only 15 minutes before the official start. You can stay in the locker room or go to the stands. Pay attention to the broadcast announcement and wait around the corresponding arena one round before the start. Renli, don't nod blindly. You have to follow me." Renli looked innocent. "It's just a martial arts stadium. How can I not find an arena?" Lu Qing held back his laughter and took the martial arts suit from the leader. There were 2 sets in total. They were the same design but different colors. They were to distinguish between the matches of the same country after the start of the top 16. One of them was plain white with a vertical red stripe from the shoulder to the waist. It looked like a ribbon. It was very cool. The other was red with golden stars. It was flamboyant. Lu Qing chose the first set. He changed in the bathroom and put on the training shoes that Wu Qinggui's company had made for him. They were white and eye-catching, with a unique design. Walking out of the bathroom, he saw Peng Liyun and Chaoyang had made the same choice as him. Renli preferred the red one. As for the martial arts shoes on her feet, they were all different. "Shall we go to the stands?" asked Lu Qing, who was going to do a live broadcast with words and pictures. "Sure." Renli rushed to answer, and then looked at the leader weakly. "Let's all go. It's better to watch from the outside." Peng Liyun looked at Zhong Ningtao with a smile, and Chaoyang nodded in agreement. "Okay." Zhong Ningtao turned around and pushed open the door of the locker room. He then returned to Renli's side, not daring to be careless. The organizing committee had set aside several times the number of seats for the contestants to isolate them from the audience. This was to prevent any violent conflicts. Lu Qing and the others chose a place far away from the other representatives. Some were watching the opponents' videos, while others were contemplating their fighting strategies. Those who were prepared began to take pictures and send them to Yenjika and Unparalleled Dragon King. At this time, a live broadcast post had appeared in the Longhu Club forum. Unparalleled Dragon King posted Lu Cheng's picture and the accompanying commentary. "Thank you to the reporter Little Tiger for his report. If there are any more important matches that are not to be broadcast, he will give us a text broadcast. Applause required." Clap, clap, clap. Eternal Nightfall Yen Shaoling, who rarely came here, clapped first and sent a secretly observing emoji. Brahman said enthusiastically, Little Tiger, have you seen my idol?" "Yes." Lu Qing glanced sideways at Peng Liyun and caught a glimpse of himself in his unfocused eyes. "Really? Quick, take a picture, and I won't make fun of you anymore." Brahman said excitedly. "I want to see Renli," Okamoto's fan said with a drooling emoji. Yes, take a picture of Peng Liyun and in Chaoyang too. Unparalleled Dragon King added with great interest. This is a bit difficult. Lu Cheng's mouth twitched. Looking around, he came up with a plan and said to Peng Liyun and the others, "Let's take a picture together." Okay. And Chaoyang and the others agreed without hesitation. Lu Cheng smiled and handed the phone to Zhong Ningtao. "Leader, help us take a picture." "Haha, souvenir? Don't worry, with your qualifications and progress, there will be plenty of opportunities to fight side by side in the future," Zhong Ningtao said with a smile. He took a few steps back and adjusted his pose like a professional. Click, click, click. After a few flashes, he returned the phone to Lu Cheng. "Take a look and see what you think. We'll do it again if it doesn't work out." "Not bad, much better than me taking it myself." Lu Cheng chuckled and glanced at the photo effect. He realized that he, Peng Liyun, and in Chaoyang were all aliens who stiffened when they were photographed. Renli, on the other hand, had a gentle smile that hinted at heroism and was extremely photogenic. He first sent the picture to Kua, and when she laughed at him, he shared it with the other protagonists. Finally, he put it in the live post. "Hey, did you rush in front of them to take the picture?" Unparalleled Dragon King and the other onlookers realized something was wrong. Careless, Lu Cheng covered his face and said with a funny face, "Yeah, that's how professional I am." "I admire you, little tiger," patting shoulder. Wonton Seller praised. Yen Shaoling said with a starry-eyed expression, "Go on, little tiger. I can call you brother, father, and grandpa. As your relative, my seniority will be lowered sooner or later." Lu Cheng said with disdain. Brahman said with a rolling on the ground expression, "I envy you. I envy you so much." Lu Cheng didn't say anything else. He spent most of his energy watching the competition and sharing it with Yenjika. He only took pictures and commentated when there was a lack of live broadcasts. Occasionally, he would exchange views with Peng Liyun, Renli, and in Chaoyang to summarize their judgments. This made Unparalleled Dragon King exclaim that little tiger looked so professional that he could be a commentator. Sometimes his judgment was even better. "I'm not fighting alone," Lu Cheng replied. During this process, Peng Liyun and Renli fought one after another. Under the circumstances where their opponents weren't at the peak of sixth pin, they won without shedding a drop of blood. However, the fierceness of Shengxiang's boxing left a deep impression on Lu Cheng and the others. Miluo and Southern Zhang's boxing were similar, but the former was more aggressive and better at using their legs. The latter was more like an assassin's style, vicious and vicious. Not long after, and Chaoyang took the stage. Under the circumstances where he didn't have much of an advantage, he fought for more than 10 minutes and finally defeated his strong opponent from Southern Zhang. He fully experienced the cruelty of Zahi boxing. The first round of double elimination matches was coming to an end. Lu Cheng said he had something to attend to in the forum, stood up, and walked to the central arena. His match was about to begin, and there was a live broadcast. In the Japanese representatives area, Ichii Sakata took a deep breath and stood up slowly with a solemn expression. Kaori Karasawa and Muko Yamashita, who had finished their matches, also looked over. "Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid," the Japanese team leader solemnly said to Ichii Sakata. "Yes." Ichii Sakata bowed deeply and turned to walk to the arena. "P.S. My trip is over and I'm returning today. The second update is at midnight. If I don't update on time, it means my flight was delayed and I have to take a break. I'll start updating tomorrow. PS2. I've been updating on time for the past few days. Even I'm scared of it." Chapter 454. How infuriating. Little Tiger actually dropped the ball at such a crucial moment. Banging the table expression, commented Brahman, in the Longhu Club forum. Unparalleled Dragon King replied with a smiley face expression. "Luckily we have resources for this match. Why do you guys think Little Tiger has something to do in today's most important match?" Rubbing his chin expression, said Invincible Punch. "Who knows? Maybe he made an appointment. The match arrangement is only released after the lots are drawn." Laughing evilly expression, said Okamoto's fan. Shengxiang's red light district is very famous. Nonsense. Little Tiger went with his girlfriend. Can't he have something to do at the last minute? Wonton Seller stood up to uphold justice. Just as everyone was discussing and speculating, Unparalleled Dragon King reminded them. It's almost time. Ichii Sakata has both supernatural abilities and realms. For Lu Cheng, he's a rare opponent below the inhuman stage. Everyone quickly shifted their attention back to the match. When Lu Cheng was about to reach the arena, he suddenly heard a special notification from his phone. Picking it up, it was a 2-second voice message from Yenjika. He clicked on the play button and put it next to his ear. He heard a soft pop sound. It's really a kiss. Lu Cheng was stunned at first, but soon burst into laughter. He replied with a kissing emoji, handed his phone and wallet to the competition supervisor, and walked up the stairs. Step by step, he settled down his joy, stirred up his blood, and trembled slightly. It was just right. Standing in the middle of the arena, he stood with his feet slightly apart. Gazing into the distance, he watched as his opponent approached quickly. Ichii Sakata, with his blonde hair, seemed to have sensed something. His footsteps slowed down, and in the end, it was as if he was facing a gale or breaking through the waves. It was heavy and difficult. His back was straight, without the slightest bend. His face was brimming with fanaticism, like a soldier about to launch a pig strike or kamikaze attack. 1 step, 2 steps. Ichii Sakata stepped into the arena and stood at the predetermined position, facing Lu Cheng from a dozen meters away. As expected of a Japanese samurai who emphasizes willpower and spirit, Lu Cheng dispersed the army formula in his mind and retracted his released aura, turning it into a towering sacred mountain in the blizzard. He had just tested his opponent a little, using the terrifying aura of the army formula that he had mastered over the past 2 months to suppress Ichii Sakata from afar. He wanted to disturb his mind and destroy his will to test his strength, but it was to no effect. Over the past 1 to 2,000 years, Japan had been deeply influenced by China. This could be seen from various aspects of society, including martial arts. However, under the influence of Japan's characteristics and ethnic habits, they developed different things. For a country that often suffered from earthquakes and typhoons, and was short on resources, life was short and easy to lose. It was better to pursue the brilliant blooming of cherry blossoms. Therefore, they paid more attention to the spirit and will in martial arts. After the initial tempering of the physical body, they were not like the Hua nation, where the will controlled the spirit and the spirit controlled the body and gradually became one. Instead, they directly used strong and extreme will to create corresponding changes and produce unique waves. Then they used this to stimulate the body and burst out with terrifying power and exaggerated speed. Among them, the Limit Hadu sect was a classic example. Lu Cheng controlled his body with willpower and spirit, and through the bridge of visualization, he wriggled his muscles, fascias, and organs to produce unique waves to complete the cultivation of force and create certain effects. The Limit Hadu sect used extreme willpower, such as anger or killing intent, to naturally change the body and produce corresponding waves. Then, the waves could be used to stimulate the body or attack the enemy. In other words, they hadn't reached the stage of force concentration. When the waves turned into the body's instincts and truly mastered the wave, they would be considered to be at the inhuman stage. Before reaching this stage, Japanese samurai tended to age prematurely due to their crazy training methods that didn't care about their bodies. Moreover, if their spirit broke down, their strength would plummet. As for the Dan stage martial artists of China, even if their willpower was worn down and they were no longer their original selves, they wouldn't regress like a cliff. This was because at that stage they were already balanced in all aspects. Their material foundation wouldn't suddenly collapse. At most, they would stagnate or experience a slight drop in strength. All sorts of thoughts flashed through Lu Cheng's mind. He saw Ichii Sakata bowing to him with a solemn expression. He returned the greeting with his hands cupped together. At this moment, the referee raised his right hand and announced in English, "Begin." In an international competition, the language barrier meant that conversation time lost its stage. If Lu Cheng hadn't been watching the competition for a long time, and was mentally prepared, he might have been at a disadvantage. Begin. Just as the referee finished speaking, a faint white glow appeared on Ichii Sakata's body. A deep tiger's roar reverberated in the air. With his palms facing each other, he placed them at his waist. As his body swayed, he pushed his shoulders forward and extended his arms, setting up the cannon barrel. His palms opened as though they were the maw of a real dragon. He spat out a ball of white light at Lu Cheng. Extreme Hadisect, Dragon Roar Hadu Punch. At the same time, Lu Cheng took a step forward, arched his body forward, and lowered his arms. With a hook and a shake, he sent out a cluster of drifting white cold flames and a brutal fireball at his opponent. Burning ice and fire. Boom. Red flames and white light shone at the same time, neutralizing each other and stirring up a gust of wind. Ichii Sakata seemed to have been prepared. The moment he unleashed the Dragon Roar Hadu Punch, a fanatical look appeared on his face. He stomped on the ground and leaped a dozen meters into the air, landing in front of Lu Cheng in an instant. Extending his right hand, he turned it into a palm knife. Using the momentum of his fall, he viciously chopped at his opponent's neck, leaving behind a trail of faint white light. Extreme Hadusect, Tiger Electric Slash. Lu Cheng didn't panic. Placing his feet together, he swung his shoulders and raised his right fist to meet his opponent's chop. Bam! Striking the edge of the palm, Ichii Sakata's body trembled slightly. He swung his arm back slightly, then swiftly turned soft and coiled around Lu Cheng's wrist like a python. Flicking his waist and back, he whipped out his left leg in midair, leaving a trail of white light that went from bottom to top. It was an exceptionally ferocious attack. Extreme Hadusect, Razor paired with soft throw. One kick and one coil, leaving the opponent distracted. This martial art included not only striking techniques, but also throwing techniques. Ignoring Ichii Sakata's grab, Lu Cheng adjusted his muscles, fascia, and organs in a flash, visualizing streaks of cold, crystal clear, but lonely and dark. Ice Spirit Holy Light Portrait. After this period of hard training, he had already made some progress and could barely visualize the Frost Force to the Ice Spirit Force. Bam! The cold wave condensed into a ray of light that shot out from Lu Cheng's waist along with his fist. Bam! A fist shrouded in cold mist blocked Ichii Sakata's razor, while Ichii Sakata's right hand had already wrapped around Lu Cheng's wrist. However, the spot he touched was slippery ice, and he couldn't exert force on it. Ice Sect 15th move, Ice Armor. Just as Ichii Sakata quickly adjusted, stimulating his body with feverish Hadu in an attempt to break through the layer of ice, he suddenly felt an indescribable chill seeping into his left leg where Lu Cheng's fists collided. He lost all feeling in his leg, and some white frost formed on his trousers. His lips turned blue. Ignoring the danger, he used the stimulation to forcefully twist his waist and kick again, using offense as defense. Bam! Ichii Sakata's right leg swept horizontally, continuing the razor stance from before. Extreme Hadusect, Whirlwind Kick. Lu Cheng sensed it. As Ichii Sakata twisted his waist, he withdrew his chi and blood and squatted down, perfectly avoiding the attack. Bam! The Dan force in his body surged. Stretching his body, his arms expanded, and his right palm shot upwards like a cannon. Bam! White ripples flashed across Ichii Sakata's body, and his right leg strangely stopped moving. Straightening his leg, he chopped downwards like a battle axe. Bam! Fist and leg collided at high speed, momentarily freezing in midair. The exaggerated muscles and shocking lines were clearly visible. Thump, thump, thump. Lu Cheng took 3 steps back, while Ichii Sakata flew backwards without any leverage. Kacha! Lu Cheng exerted force on his feet, shifting his center of gravity, and pounced forward swiftly, like a ferocious beast that had locked onto its prey. In his mind he visualized Ice Spirit Holy Light, which was boundless darkness without a trace of heat, and instantly transformed it into dense thunderclouds. Ice Spirit Force's version of Severe Warning. Ichii Sakata had just landed when he saw his opponent pouncing at him. Not daring to be careless, he let out a low growl and swung his right fist. As his fist moved forward, his body rapidly emitted a thick white light. The light rose into the shape of a dragon and a tiger. Like a flame, it instantly ignited Ichii Sakata, turning him into a huge Hadu, which struck towards Lu Qing amidst the roars of dragons and tigers. Ultimate Hadu Sex Killer Move, Roaring Dragon and Tiger Mighty Punch. This was originally the ultimate move of a samurai who had truly mastered Hadu, but Ichii Sakata was able to use it at his current level by relying on his supernatural ability. Bam! Lu Cheng's crystal-frosted fist struck the huge white light. His opponent's strength was terrifying and domineering, coupled with the burning flames and the violent explosion. He couldn't help but take a few steps back, leaving a footprint and a crack in his body. After a few steps, he finally calmed down, but his right arm was still trembling uncontrollably. Ichii Sakata didn't pursue. He stood rooted to the ground, allowing the white light to dissipate bit by bit, revealing his body. Shivering, his eyes lost focus and his consciousness blurred. His dyed yellow hair was covered in ice shards. At this moment, Lu Qing raised his hand and formed a seal, outlining an ancient character in his mind. "All right," he said in a low voice, his body leaving afterimages as he sprinted towards his opponent. In the Japanese delegation, Muko Yamashita's pupils shrank. P.S. Damn it, I'm stuck. I was supposed to write 6,000 in 4 hours this afternoon, but I only managed to write 3,000. There will be a second update at 12. I'll start making up for it tomorrow. Chapter 455. He was surrounded by darkness. There was no light, no warmth, and even the concept of cold was lacking, let alone sound and color. This was where Ichii Sakata wandered aimlessly. It was only when he began to struggle in his heart, and was alerted by his own will and spirit, that he was jolted awake. He felt the bone-chilling cold, a cold that dulled his thoughts and made him numb. Not good. Ichii Sakata's heart suddenly felt a sense of danger. He finally saw the light in front of him, and saw an opponent that appeared in a flash. Am I going to lose the match and lose all my honor and expectations? No. Struggling, Ichii Sakata tightened his thighs and pulled out his right leg, whipping up a trail of white light that resembled a meteor from the bottom to the top. His kick stimulated the corresponding parts of his body with undulation. The ferocious force caused his body to be deflected. He took advantage of the momentum and sent his left leg flying. Alternating between his legs, he created a bright white whirlwind. Bam bam bam. Crisp sounds rang out continuously, almost converging into a single sound. The white undulation dispersed, opening a path for the whirlwind kick. At the critical moment, Ichii Sakata unleashed an astounding force. Lu Qing had just closed in when he was met with this ferocious counterattack. He lowered his center of gravity and stopped abruptly. In his mind, he visualized a heavy scorching sun and the god of fire riding a red dragon. His waist and abdominal muscles bulged, and his fascias on both sides pulled together. With a burst of his shoulders, he punched forward with his right fist. Bam! In the process of passing through the airflow, his fist seemed to be ignited by a layer of invisible flames that flickered unsteadily. Boom! His fist hit the air and the scarlet flames exploded, spreading forward and setting off a terrifying wave of fire. Amidst the loud boom, the layers of white light were swallowed up by the crimson sea of fire, while Ichii Sakata's feet kicked the sea of fire away, clearing the area around him. Bam! Lu Cheng's arm joints flexed and his fascia stretched. He punched his opponent's foot for the second time, stopping his chain of kicks. The force rebounded and his right arm swung. Lu Cheng's chi and blood retracted and fluctuated. His left arm swelled and flung out, transforming into a large spear that pointed at Ichii Sakata's body. Bam! Ichii Sakata's right arm glowed and swelled to twice its original size. He slashed down vertically, hitting his opponent's fist in time. Then, as his body swayed backwards, his hand blade lowered and dragged, cutting into his opponent's fascias. However, Lu Qing withdrew his fist as soon as it made contact. Borrowing strength, he returned it to his lower abdomen and kicked out with his right foot. Bam! Bam bam bam! After gaining the upper hand in one move, he immediately suppressed his opponent. 24 blizzard strikes, combined with the seemingly inexhaustible force concentration, launched a series of frenzied attacks. The more he fought, the fiercer and stronger he became. Ichii Sakata couldn't break free from the extreme Hadasect karate moves even after using several extreme Hadasect karate moves. He was forced to use the Hadu to stimulate his body, sometimes retreating and struggling to hold on. His heart skipped a beat. What he was feeling wasn't an illusion. There really was a cold wind blowing around him. Snowflakes fell and melted in an instant. He's about to transform. Peng Liyun murmured thoughtfully, no longer in a daze. He clutched his phone with one hand and stuffed the other in his pocket. In the past, Lu Cheng's supernatural ability was his supernatural ability, and the dance stage explosion was the dance stage explosion. There was a clear distinction between the two, and there was an obvious gap between them. But now, with his continuous force concentration, the force of frost was gradually revealing itself. It was almost becoming an instinct. What did this mean? It meant that his root pulp was showing signs of internal transformation. He was about to push open the door to the inhuman stage and begin an important transformation on the path of martial arts. So fast. Runli frowned slightly. Feeling the pressure of her competitor closing in, she had a strong desire to move forward. And Chaoyang took a deep breath, forgetting the music in his ears. He muttered to himself, "How many months has it been?" It hadn't even been 4 months since the end of the national competition in April. Lu Cheng's state had already soared from the peak of 6th pin to the brink of a breakthrough. This was like riding a rocket to the next level. After a short moment of shock, he suddenly remembered something. He smiled at Ren Li and Peng Liyun. It's less than a month before the all-knowing man starts crying. Gambling isn't good. Peng Liyun nodded seriously. He logged into his Weibo and quietly browsed through the popular content of the all-knowing man in ganghood over the years. It seemed like a farewell ceremony. Runli pondered for a few seconds. She took out her phone and found the gambling column. She planned to use her personal savings to earn some extra money and donate it. 10 seconds later, she revealed an embarrassed smile. She turned to An Chaoyang and the team leader, Zhong Ningtao. How do I do this? I've only heard of it, but never gambled on it. In the Japanese representatives area, Kaori Karasawa sat quietly. She looked at the arena and said in a neutral tone, "Ikiai-kun, if you can't break through your past self, the competition will be tough." Yes. Muko Yamashita retracted his gaze. His expression had returned to normal. The old-fashioned and serious team leader looked at him and asked in a deep voice, "Muko-kun, can you beat this contestant Lu Cheng?" The void behind Muko Yamashita seemed to be shaking. A milky white light flashed and disappeared, rising into the vague shape of a dragon and tiger. "Yes," he answered succinctly. "Even if Lu Cheng made a breakthrough and completed his transformation according to the Chinese, I'm still confident in my current state." In the Longhu Club Forum, unparalleled Dragon King, who couldn't feel the cold wind and see the falling snow, sighed. Lu Cheng is improving so fast. Now even his physical fitness is at the top of the 6th pin. It's not impossible for him to break through to the inhuman stage before the end of the year. Yeah, I thought Ichii Sakata, an outstanding 6th pin fighter, would be able to create some trouble for him. Who knew from the beginning until now, Ichii Sakata didn't even have a chance. Road to the arena side. Let's watch. Every fighter who can reach this level is not easy to deal with. The more advantageous the situation is, the more Lu Cheng can't be careless. Pig Riding Knight expressed his opinion. Brahmin and Eternal Nightfall didn't have time to discuss or praise. They silently saved up their luck and watched the competition. Bam bam bam. Bam bam bam. Ichii Sakata felt the cold wind getting stronger and his body stiffening. He knew that if this continued, he would be crushed sooner or later by Lu Cheng, who kept borrowing strength and getting stronger. This can't go on. I have to break out. Ichii Sakata screamed in his heart. He tried desperately, but he was too slow to make a decision. Lu Cheng's mega avalanche had already taken shape. It was powerful and almost impossible to interrupt. The more he fought, the more hopeless he felt. Ichii Sakata could see the referee raising his right hand and announcing his defeat. He could also see the criticism and ridicule on the internet and newspapers. No, I can't lose. I can't lose to an opponent of the same level. He thought of his father, who was also from the extreme Hadu sect. He thought of his father's fervent hope. He thought of his friends fawning over him. He thought of the admiration in the eyes of the girls. He thought of the various privileges he received in his daily life. He thought of the moment his halo disappeared, and he became an ordinary samurai. He would lose everything and never be able to raise his head again. Even if he was still strong, he would no longer be the center of attention. No. I don't want this to happen. Ichii Sakata's mind buzzed. His vision seemed to be filled with a glaring blood red. The long-suppressed feelings of fear, hatred, and murderous intent in his heart suddenly erupted. At this moment, the pale white glow radiating from his body was gradually dyed a faint crimson. The hustle and bustle returned to silence and restraint. Come on! Ichii Sakata roared. He took a step forward with his left foot and punched with his right fist. With a bang, a crimson glow enveloped his body, exuding a thick murderous intent. It intimidated his opponent's heart and mind, making it difficult for Lu Qing to focus for a short while. Extreme Hadu Sect Sure Kill Move, 7 Sins Hadu Punch. This move used negative thoughts as fuel. It was equivalent to a combination of Dragon Roar Hadu Punch and the Army formula, bringing with it the effect of fear. Memories brought explosive power. Ichii Sakata broke through his past and delivered the strongest punch of his life. Amidst the deep roars of dragons and tigers, the pale red Hadu transformed into a sharp scythe of death. With Ichii Sakata's fist as the blade, it cleaved at his enemy. Lu Qing had a premonition of danger when Ichii Sakata's white Hadu changed. Flipping his hands, he formed a seal and outlined the fearless forwarding formula in his mind. As the voice echoed, he managed to intimidate his heart and mind in time. He bounced back and retreated quickly. He wasn't retreating to avoid Ichii Sakata's 7 Sins Hadu Punch. It was too fast for him to dodge. He was retreating to buy himself some time to prepare. In Lu Qing's mind, the Great River Freezes appeared. In a vast expanse of whiteness, a huge crimson sun fell from the sky and smashed into this cold world. Boom! Ice and fire collided violently with his right fist, collapsing and condensing into a dark daughter vortex. Bam! Lu Qing lowered his feet, bounced his back, and pulled back his right arm before shooting it out like lightning. Mutated version of severe warning. Poof! As the fist and the faint red Hadu punch collided, the glow disappeared. All the murderous intent, fear, and power seemed to have been absorbed by Lu Qing and hidden in the vortex that had collapsed. Boom! The vortex disintegrated, and the violent recoil of energy slammed into Ichii Sakata's fist like a tidal wave, sending him flying. Lu Qing's right arm was sore and swollen. For a moment he lost his strength. Without waiting for it to recover, he stomped on the ground and pounced forward with a loud crack, closing in on his opponent who had yet to land. At this moment, Ichii Sakata struck the ground with a milky white Hadu punch, stirring up a cloud of dust and scattering shockwaves. Lu Qing was about to throw another punch when his heart skipped a beat. He realized that his ability to lock onto his opponent had mysteriously lost its effect. In that instant, Ichii Sakata seemed to have disappeared from the arena. He couldn't sense him at all. An ice mirror formed in his mind as he sensed danger coming at him from behind. Lu Qing turned his back, leaned to the side, and lightly kicked out with his left leg. Bam! The back of his foot struck Ichii Sakata, who had appeared out of nowhere. The impact made his body wobble, and the killing move he was about to unleash came to an abrupt halt. What Ichii Sakata had just used was the ninjutsu back attack that he had been secretly practicing for the past 2 years. However, it felt like he had fallen into a trap. Once the move was successful, Lu Qing immediately followed up with a right kick, from the bottom up. Bam bam bam. 1 kick, 2 kicks, 3 kicks. He kicked Ichii Sakata until he was floating. Lu Qing retracted his aura and immediately unleashed it. His body spun rapidly, and with a snap his left leg kicked Ichii Sakata, sending him flying like a soccer ball. Thump! Ichii Sakata lost his balance and fell heavily. Then he heard the ancient sound of the word attainment, and saw Lu Qing's white martial arts shoes stop beside his ear. The referee raised his right hand and announced in English, "Lu Qing wins." You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.